Special open meeting of Suias Council and December the 9th, 2020 at 10 a.m. in council chambers. So we need a resolution to exclude the public, and we will need it moved that in accordance with Ministerial Order M192, Town of Osuya special open meeting be closed to the public due to the inability to meet physical distancing recommendations made under the Public Health Act in council chambers located at 8707 Main Street. And that to ensure openness, transparency, accessibility, and accountability, the Town of Osuya special open meeting will be recorded, live streamed, and published on the town's website. Councillor Rhodes, Councillor Bennett, all in favor? Thank you very much. And the adoption of the agenda, we just have 3 business items on here, and there's nothing more to add. Good, thank you. So we need a motion, please, that the special open meeting of December the 9th be approved. Councillor King, Councillor Harvey, all in favor. Thank you. And we have 3 items on our agenda today, landfill budget, sewer budget, and water budget. So we will go to the first item on is landfill budget, and we will ask Mr. Zackel to explain this to us. Thank you, Mr. Zackel.
So this is the 2021 landfill operating budget and the waste management service and regulations bylaw 1370. This budget presentation for 2021 for the Osuya landfill budget and recommended changes to the waste management service and regulation bylaw. There's been a number of changes in waste and recycling collections in 2020. The first notable change was due to the blue bags being banned from Recycle BC and replaced with recycling bins for properties receiving garbage and recycling collection in town. This is an increase of $3.65 per month per residential dwelling, or $43.80 annually for these bins. In 2020, $42,000 was used from the reserve fund for waste recycling initiatives to leave a balance on a reserve account of $28,000 for 2021. The second major change in landfill operations was the current contract with B&B Wood Grinding for landfill operations was expiring on December 31st. The new contract was awarded to the highest ranking company from the RFP process, being Whistle Waste Solutions BC Limited. The impact of the new contract results in an increase of 57.47%, or $165,810 in 2021. The new contractor now takes on the liability and responsibility of being the prime contractor for the facility. In addition, the public is currently accessing the active phase to offload their garbage, and in an effort to maximize residential customer safety for the town, has added the requirement of installing a separate offload area for residential waste receiving for residential customers and small commercial customers located away from the active phase where the large commercial vehicles are unloading. So the Waste Management Service and Regulations Bylaw 1370-2020 is attached and has a number of changes to the rates for 2025 as included. Definition updates to update the bylaw's definitions to adhere to the new collection requirements from Recycle BC that took effect in July 2020 for recycling collection. Garbage collection and recycling collection. In a recommended option 1, this rate is increased from $140.70 to $184.50 to account for the additional cost of the recycling bins. If council wished to spread the increase out over 2 years rather than 1, they could consider using the reserve balance of $28,000 to offset some of these costs to bring the new rate down to $170.50. This would require 3 separate resolutions as shown in options 2, 3, and 4. A review of the landfill tipping fees has also been considered to offset some of the increases in costs associated with the operations of the landfill. One of the current limitations is the current agreement with Waste Collections, which has a provision in their contract that any increases to tipping fees over a certain threshold also increases their rates for providing their garbage collection services. The town will be working with the contractor to try to come up with a solution that works for both parties that gives the town more flexibility in determining future rates. The maximum amount the town can increase the current tipping fee from is from $110 a ton to $114.99 a ton, which is a 4.54% increase, with no increase in costs from waste collections. All other rate categories have also been adjusted by that 4.54% increase, as well as a minimum fee for landfill tipping. Yard waste compostables have increased from $5 to $6.50. These resulting increases will generate an additional $30,305 in revenue. For 2021, $26,725 is being utilized from landfill reserve to balance off the budget for 2021. For 2022 and beyond, the goal is to ensure the landfill operations are fully funded from fees. Notices of the pending rate changes will also be mailed to larger commercial companies utilizing our facilities, as well as notice being published in our local paper and posted on the town's website through e-news. So the options before council: for council to give first three readings to Waste Management Service and Regulations Amendment Bylaw 137220. Option 2 was for council to give first reading to Waste Management Service and Regulation Amendment Bylaw 137220. Option 3 is for council to amend Waste Service and Regulations Amendment Bylaw 1370-2020 by reducing the rate for garbage and collection to $170.50 and give first reading as amended. And option 4 for council to give second and third reading to Waste Management Service and Regulations Amendment Bylaw 1370-2020. Option 5 for council to amend 1370-2020 by using $28,000 from waste recycling reserves and reduce the proposed rate, garbage collection rate, to $170.50 to give and give first three readings to Waste Management Service and Regulations Bylaw 1309. Okay, that one's off of there. That shouldn't be on there. And option 6 was for council to direct staff to make further amendments to go for consideration. So at this time, I'll turn the questions over to council.
Can you go back to, are you crossing off number 5? Is that
Yes,
what
I
you're?
am.
Oh,
Because number 3 is exactly what number 5 is going to be.
okay.
Number 5 was an old one I was writing on with an old bylaw.
All right, so we'll cross off number 5. This is, of course, a tricky thing to deal with, because we've had not only the increase because of the bins this summer, but now we have a new contactor out there, which of course is costing more money. So council, what do you think about this? Councillor Rhodes. Brian, you're next. Brian.
Thank you, Member Kordoff. So spending reserve money is highly controversial and always stimulates a lot of debate. I'm kind of feeling in this particular case that using that $28,000 to reduce the overall impact might be a good thing at this time. And I know it's not a permanent thing, and I'm thinking that next year it would probably go up exponentially again. But I mean, it's a look. So we just had one, like the mayor just indicated. When you're sitting at home and you're going through your personal expenses, you don't really care what they're for. Your cost of living goes up exponentially. So every time we introduce a new dollar increase, that's another dollar that comes out of personal finances. And I think it's in number 3, but I'm not exactly sure, because it doesn't say that in there about the 28,000 using the reserve.
That is exactly the case with option number 3.
Yeah,
We'd
the
be
amount
utilizing-
is there, but
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump right in and make a motion based on the wording in number 3.
Is there a seconder for that? Sorry.
If Councillor Rhodes wants to do that, we should be doing it as option number 2 to start with. And basically, it's because the byline in the report is written with the higher amount in there. I would recommend that you do for council to give first reading to Waste Management Service and Regulations Amendment Bylaw amendment.
So that's only first reading, and
No, option 3, pardon me.
and 3
Yeah, 3 does cover that, I think.
gives all 3.
You'd move to first?
Yes.
You wouldn't vote on it? You'd move to amend it at first reading by utilizing the reserve fund contribution identified in the report amendment, you vote on first reading as amended, and then you read it a second and a third
I had it right.
time. You're getting there.
So,
Brianna and I were thinking the same anyways. It's
Do you-
never been very
I got
clear.
some more
No.
conversation.
yes, CJ, are you okay to wait
Sure.
for a sec? Because Counselor Harvey had his hand up. So Counselor Harvey, did you want to speak next, and then we'll look at this? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. My comments are at a bit of a higher level. I said it in October when we were considering the fire budget, that I have great difficulty doing these things in isolation. We do the fire budget, and it's a huge increase. Now we're looking at water and sewer and solid waste, which is another significant increase, and we haven't even gotten to this budget yet. The taxpayer doesn't know any of this unless they're paying attention until they get their tax. And so I'm again going to advocate that somehow we look at changing this process so that we consider all of these increases we're responsible for at the same time. Can't do it this year, I can. And looking at this, we approved in isolation from everything else, on average, a $17.27 increase for fire, a $43 increase for blue bins. The proposals that we have in front of us for sewer and water are $14.65 and $11.80 respectively, which is an $86 increase on average. So on an average $1,500 tax bill, that's 6%. And we haven't even got to the municipal discussion, the projects that the directors want to throw in. So we're already at 6%, assuming this package gets approved without modification. And I really struggle with that. The heart of this one is the blue bin. Council approved them. We're now going to live with them, but they have a huge impact. My willingness to approve anything is not absolutely essential to do this year. And there's a host of them in this package. You know, we've already discussed the new contract. That's done. We've already discussed blue bins. That's done. This is just marginal stuff. Particular report, whether it's option 1 or 2, 3, and 4, is rounding errors, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
So did you have a suggestion on how we should proceed with this? Because we are going to have some increases in this, Councillor Harvey, for sure, because the contract that we have signed includes increases for sure. It's just how we sort of manage them.
Yeah, okay,
What
so
would
as far as
you?
this particular as far as this particular report goes, I would favor going with using reserve options 2, 3, and 4. Or sorry, yeah, 2, 3, and 4. To minimize the impact of that ridiculous blue bin increase.
Okay, so go ahead,
I got a
Councillor
question.
King and then
I
Councillor
got a
Bennett.
question,
Yeah.
Mr. Zackel. Zackel, on your revenue side, on your budget page for 221, you show an increase there of about 60,000. But when I add the 4.54 increase, which would be about 23,000, and reserves at 26,000, that only comes up to about 48,000, and you're showing an increase of 60,000. So how do we make that difference?
We've got increases in the landfill septage fees as well.
I'm just talking tipping fees.
I know, but that increase is built into both of them. So I've got in our waste collection bylaw, that number's built into there as well.
So it comes out of a different place?
It basically, it's a different charge, but that increase in our bylaw also reflects the fees collected for the sewage tipping fees, or for the sewage on hauled liquid waste.
Well, why aren't they separate if this is the landfill?
Because it's all part of the landfill facility, and we want those revenues to be in there to offset some of our expenditures.
And how much do we have in reserves total right now that we could utilize?
Well, that's at 28,000.
That's all we have,
That's what we put away for the
increase?
the increase or the future
Yeah.
recycling initiatives. We do have our additional funding that we got from the government. The $1.6 million that was basically built to assist municipalities when there's reductions in revenue, increase in expenditures, things of that nature. So we do have that,
Okay.
but that's only a one-time grant, so that only gets us through, you know, on a short-term basis, but
Well, I guess I relate with everybody having hard times this past year and a lot of people not working. Maybe we could take an extra 20,000 or something out of that 1.6 million to bring this increase down to 3% from 6%. I don't know if
Is-
there's a will for that, but.
Is there a way to go through all of these things without touching the 1.6 and then decide at the end, this tax increase is too steep and we'd like to offset it with some of that, or does it have to be done individually?
they
we-
really should be done individually
Okay.
because we're talking about the bylaws. You-
Right.
You need to give the readings to the bylaws, adopt the bylaws before those fees become effective. These bylaws, in hindsight, should be adopted before December 31st so that they're effective January 1st. Those things all really affect us. I agree.
Yeah.
Utilizing reserves do help. But when we're talking about fees for services, if we artificially utilize reserves to offset those fees, at some point in time, we have to increase those fees. So it's better to deal with our larger taxation type of issues, general taxation, and the larger components like the water, the sewer, where there's capital projects that are involved in there, or fleet equipment, where that's built into our expenditures, where, you know, that one-time purchase of them softens the blow, but it also gives us the ability to start saving some reserves for future purchases of capital equipment.
Well, I guess I'm not saying don't increase, I just think it shouldn't be quite as much. I guess I relate to also the actual revenue for this year seems to be quite a bit less. I mean, we got about 6 weeks to go, I guess, to hit what the budget was 460, we brought in 389.
Yeah,
So
there's
it
still,
sounds like we're gonna be behind the 8 ball just on revenue for 220.
no, I believe our
That would
revenue
be right
should
on
come
good.
in very
Oh,
close.
okay.
It's, yeah, it's going to be very close.
Okay. Anyhow, that would be my thought to try to bring that, have it a smaller increase, so it doesn't impact quite as much.
So Councillor Bennett, you okay? Councillor Rhodes, you had something else to add?
Thank you again, Mayor McCordoff. I concur with Councillor Harvey that this can be very confusing because the budget is a big picture item. When we make these decisions individually like this, it's hard to see the overall impact at the end of the day. I have always taken comfort in the fact that sometimes you have to move forward. This particular one was dependent, I mean, the contract came to an end on January 1st. If we don't do this, we won't have a landfill. So we have to go through this process. It's a done deal. Contract has been signed. So I do take comfort in that. At the end of the day, if we're faced with a 10 or 12 or a 15% increase, we are empowered to reduce that exponentially through capital projects and that kind of thing, so that the overall impact is favorable to the residents of our community, and it allows us to continue doing business. That's how I get through this. Going through these things individually, I'm not like, you know, I could never ever figure it out. I always rely on Jim. I like when you brought the calculator before with the tape.
I do
You
too,
know,
I'm
that,
worried,
that was a
Jim.
1% increase, that was a -1. But I mean, that, it's far more complex than that. But we need to get through these ones that we're not really, that we cannot change. And I don't want to just add one more thing. That money that we got in that grant, I would speak against using any of that to reduce our budget amounts at the end of the day, because I think we're going to have lots of opportunity to spend that on other things in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Chabot, did you have something you wanted to
Your Worship, just a general comment about looking at things individually. For the utilities, it's by design and by necessity that they are looked at individually. They are intended to be self-funding utilities, and they're not supported by general tax revenue. And so you're always going to be looking at your water and your sewer separate. Sometimes your garbage is just included in your general taxation bill and funded from that. But by design, you will be looking at water, sewer independent of everything else.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I don't dispute that, but the impact on the taxpayer is a tax bill, single tax bill. And so I would like the process to be designed such that, you know, even though we consider them individually, you know, we consider it the sewer and water today, we would do the municipal taxes, you know, next week. We would see the overall of all these individuals on the taxpayer when they get their tax bill. It's one number now. And so I get the process, but knowing the impact of each of these individuals in a cumulative manner is really important to me.
I think that we used to do them all on one day, and we put everything in. Is that not correct? And then we decided that it would probably be better to split it up because it was too much for one day. So can I ask, like we used to do sewer, water, everything all in one day and not have a separate day for this. But Mr. Chabot, do we have another meeting scheduled to deal with the next part, which is what Mr. Councillor Harvey's?
Yeah, I don't know that we have a firm date yet, but we're thinking later in January.
Okay, so
in
it's
order
very
for it
soon.
to be put
has to
together.
be. Yeah.
And our budget's a little bit complicated with the need to get the Rural Fire Protection District to review the fire department budget by the end of October each year. The regional district to consider the Sun Bowl Arena. So it's become disjointed. And yeah, I think in future years, the idea of moving and advancing forward the entire budget process so it can be looked at comprehensively. I totally understand where council's coming from, that knowing the net impact on the taxpayer, how one thing relates to another, is an important part of it, and we'll try to find a way to make that happen.
And please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we should go back to the other way, because it seems to me we started at 9 and sometimes we didn't finish till 6 or 7 at night. So I think this is a little bit more palatable to deal with these things where we have a little bit longer time to do the discussion and have the others on a different day. I don't have a problem with that. Councillor Rhodes?
Thank you, Member Kordoff. So once again, I'd like to throw my support behind Councillor Harvey's comments. This is the second time that he's brought this up. We talked about it before. It would be nice to have a big digital sign up there. You make a decision on a report, it goes up and down, you know, that kind of thing. I know that's not realistic, but somehow or another, when we work through these to see what the overall impact is, would be very, very beneficial and really help with the decision-making process.
Jim, could you bring back your...
I
I think he threw it out years ago.
That's
It
why I
was
was
pretty
drawing that
amazing,
comparison.
and it gave us a sense of comfort because you used to go click, 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 and you'd say, okay, here we are, this is a...
And
So
that's-
I think that's what they mean, I'm assuming, is that, yeah.
And I hear council, I
Yeah.
understand that. Historically, we did do everything all in one day. It was usually done towards the end of January, beginning of February. But because we started to try to get the utilities done before the end of the year so that the bylaws would trigger the effective date of January 1st, that threw a
I
bit of
get
a
it.
wrinkle into it. We'll do our best to try to move forward in the future where this is the case.
Okay.
Councillor Harvey, this should have been done. What we will do is, moving forward, any of these changes that we have been made, I'll have something for council to be able to see how the overall effect is to the average taxpayer as we're moving forward. So
Thank you.
I have
So,
heard you.
how are we going to proceed with this? Is there anybody who would like to make a motion? Councillor Rhodes?
So I'm I thought I was really clear on this, but now I'm a little confused, but I'd like to offer a motion based on using that $28,000 reserve as a one-time opportunity to reduce that cost down to that $170.
So that'd be option number 2.
Is that be option number 2? Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are you all right with that, Councillor Rhodes?
If
We'll
that
start with
covers that,
one.
yeah, that would be my motion then.
That gets the,
That
that
doesn't
gets the
skip,
bylaw in the process of
Yeah, you
being
gotta do
read,
number
at
3
which
to-
time now you can
We got it.
consider amending it,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it's been published and
Yeah,
printed
yeah.
in your agenda. So you can only read bylaws, and you need to amend them while you're being read.
I'll second the number 2.
All right, so now do we have to take a vote on this before we amend it?
No, now you will amend it before you vote on it, and you will amend it by reducing the garbage collection rate by utilizing reserves of X dollars.
28,000.
Yeah,
And then
so-
you vote
Yeah.
on that amendment, then you'll vote on first.
Oh,
reading
okay.
as
So we vote on the amendment first and then come back and vote on this.
Yeah,
All
so
right.
what I've got is for council to amend Waste Management Service and Regulations Amendment Bylaw 1370, 2020 by reducing the rate for garbage recycling collection to $170.50 by using $28,000 in reserves, and give first reading as amended.
Okay, so is that,
Yeah.
you're okay with that? Councillor Harvey, are you all right with that?
Amendment?
Seconding it?
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
So this is just, we're just voting on the amendment now. All right, so
The title in the motions is wrong too. The word amendment doesn't appear in the title of the bylaw.
Okay, so it's Regulations Bylaw.
Yeah, it's not amended.
Because we changed it. We were just gonna amend the old bylaw, but we repealed the old one because some definitions and wording in the bylaw were changed as well as rates.
Okay, so we're now gonna take a vote on this motion of amending the bylaw. All in favor? Thank you very much. Now, just want to do this carefully. What we're going to do is vote on option 2 as amended.
No, option
No.
number 4.
Yeah.
Number
Yes,
4.
yes,
Still-
no,
still
you're
the
correct.
first option.
You're correct, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
You're now going to vote on option 2
Okay,
as amended.
You voted that it be amended. Now you need to vote on first reading as it was amended.
Yeah.
okay. So is somebody like to move that? Councillor King, Councillor Rhodes. So now we are voting on just the first reading of this?
Yes.
Or, no, not all
Yeah.
three,
Yeah.
just the first. Okay, so could you read that out to us, please, Mrs. Hilson?
Well, I'll read you both motions. So it was Councillor Rhodes, Councillor King, that the Waste Management Services Regulation Bylaw be read a first time, and then Councillor Rhodes and Councillor Harvey, that Waste Management Service and Regulations Bylaw number 1370, 2020 be amended by utilizing the contributions from reserves that reduces the rates for garbage recycling collection to $170.50. And then it'll be passed, once council, that the Waste Management Services Regulations Bylaw number 1370 be read a first time as amended.
Okay, so that's what we're voting on right now? Are you okay? Go ahead, Councillor Rhodes.
I hate to keep delaying this, but how will we ever get this done by January 1st if we just do first reading today?
No, we're
Well,
gonna do.
number
You got
one
one,
is
you got
second
one more
and
reading
third.
to have.
We've
One
got
more
four
motion
more
after this.
options here.
Okay.
So we're gonna do this one first. I know, it's confusing, isn't it? So let's take a vote on the motion to first reading as amended, right? All in favor? Thank you, that's carried. Now, we need a motion to go to, not to number 3, but to number 4? Okay,
Can I just ask a question?
yes.
first? If it gets the second and third reading, does it come back for fourth and final, or is third the
It
final?
comes for adoption, the next regular council meeting.
on the
Okay, so we
21st.
could go through this, and then you'd show us the increase, and we could decide whether we still want to stay with what we're doing. We could change it. Wouldn't have to give it a fourth reading if all of a sudden the number comes 12 or 60% increase after we finish this book. We could make changes technically.
Technically, if you
If we choose to,
If you chose to, you would have to reread the bylaw again, and then, so that would delay the adoption. We would end up having to call a special open between the 21st and the 31st if this bylaw was to be adopted before January 1st.
yeah, but okay, but I mean, that can be
Yes,
done.
it could be done,
And
but you would have to reread it.
But it gives us a way to look at the number, is all I'm saying. I'm not saying we're gonna turn
Yes.
it down, I'm just saying there is that option.
Yes, there is
Yeah.
that option, but yes, you would have to reread the bylaw. You-
Call your Christmas Day.
Well, we're not going
Nothing to
anywhere.
do,
We-
not
so
going
It's all be all right. We could be here. So,
And I'll make a motion number 4.
you're
Second,
moving,
third.
and the way it's written is okay?
I believe that's right.
Okay. So are you seconding that? Thank you. So we have option number 4 for council to give second and third readings to Waste Management Services Regulation Amendment Bylaw number 1370, 2020.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'm just taking out the amendment because it's not an amendment bylaw. It's actually,
It's not an, okay, so we take out the word amendment?
yes, it's the Waste Management Services and Regulations bylaw.
Okay. So, we had a mover and a seconder? Are we ready? Anybody still confused? Let's do this. All in favor? Thank you very much. Go ahead, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you again. Just so I can get it straight in my mind, at the next regular meeting, are we going through every one of these reports, or can we do the budget as a whole?
The budget as a whole will not be ready to bring forward to council till the third week in January.
No, the landfill budget, for
The
example.
landfill budget,
Yeah.
what you've done by doing this change, if it's adopted, is you've added that $28,000 in from reserves, and you've reduced what this average single-family dwelling taxpayer will pay. So that will balance the landfill budget.
So at the next meeting,
You'll just have the bylaw.
final reading.
You'll just have the bylaw coming forward for final reading.
Okay, gotcha.
For each one of these things in the book to
Correct.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, there'd be no additional reports.
No,
If
gotcha.
they get third reading.
If they get through to reading,
I
yes.
just wanted to make sure that we're able to get this done.
yeah. I just had a question. I'm wondering if our bylaw dealing with our landfill is sent to, say, the regional district, who has several other landfills. We own our own. Do they have a look at this? Does anybody comment on it? How do we know what they're going to do and what their fees are? Because it could be different from ours, or
They
am I
they
correct?
act totally independent from us. Most times, I'll have communications with them to see if they're increasing tipping fees or not. Right now, their current tipping fees are still at $110 per ton. I don't believe they made a change since we have. Usually, it's a reactionary. If one's increasing, the other one will do the same. The difference in tipping fees between the two locations is not going to create landfill shopping. It's not a big enough increase to have people drive that much further to go get rid of their waste. So this is actually a benefit for our municipality. It's ensuring that we're recovering the fees that are needed rather than the taxpayers having to be on the hook to pay for those.
Thank you, Mr. Zackel. Okay, can we move on to the next item? I'm not even sure what
Okay.
page we're on. Are
So
we
this
going
is page
sewer
20.
budget?
Page 20.
Page 20.
Page 20,
Yeah.
and this would be the sewer budget.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Zackel.
So this budget presentation is for the 2021 to 25 sewer operating and capital budget, and highlighted as follows. The budget is being presented to council with a 5.2% increase to sewer user fees. This increase to sewer single-family residential rate is from $265.54 to $280.19, which is an annual increase of $14.65 for single-family residents. This will increase revenues by $78,800 to offset the increase in operating expenditures. For 2021 to 25, It is estimated that the increase in sewer user fees will be 4% annually for those years. Operating expenditures have increased by $95,125, or 7.10% for 2021. The majority of these increases are wages, salaried, and stipend, $45,795. Wages estimated to increase by 2%. In addition, 50% of the full-time exempt position has been added to the position starting in July of 2021, and additional details are in Mr. Bronstein's report. Additional maintenance of the wastewater treatment plant and chlorine costs accounts for $24,000, $10,950 in maintenance costs, $11,000 in additional equipment financing for 50% of the costs associated with a new pickup truck and 50% of the costs associated with the replacement of a 5-ton crane, $3,380 in utilities. In comparison, the town of Oliver is currently in budget deliberations and has given first 3 readings to their bylaw to increase their sewer user fees by 4% for 2021. So sewer rates and regulations bylaw 1368 2020 is attached for council's consideration. If we move forward, page 24, I believe this item has already been discussed. Operational budget increase for the water, waste, or water sewer full-time equivalent.
It definitely was brought to council.
Okay.
I think we just thought it was going to be brought forward. We have not voted on it.
Okay. So at this point in time, I'll pass this over to Jared.
Go ahead.
Floor is open to council, your worship.
So are we specifically talking about the water sewer?
We can go through each report and each line item if you like, your worship.
I think we should go through each report.
Yep.
Before we do that, I have a question, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and my question's for Zachel. On page 20, we show operating expenditures have increased by $95,000. That assumes we approve the full-time equivalent. And I've tipped forward to page 27, which outlines some proposed capital projects, and it shows $314,290 coming, what looks to me, from the operating budget, which would be an additional increase. Is that, like, how do I reconcile those two numbers?
Okay, so the $314,290 is the operating revenues received, that's a surplus operating revenues received that are available for capital projects. So basically, of the sewer user fees, the sewer parcel tax fees, all the revenues that we received, less the operating expenditures, we had that net surplus of $314,290 available for capital projects. As a comparison on that page, in 2020, we had $314,049. In 2019, we had $521,530. Why you see a big change there was because of the new debt that we took on for the main lift station. So the debt payments were coming out of those surplus funds rather than increasing rates at that time. I hope that
Okay, thank you. That clears it up.
Okay.
Okay. So we will go back to, so obviously we've got to discuss whether this should be included in the budget or not, this wastewater manager. So that would be in, but you've already included the possibility of having that there in your fees, in your, yes.
These numbers reflect that
That
this
that
is in there,
is
correct.
included. Okay, council, what do you think?
I'll give option 1, first 3 readings.
And is there a seconder for that?
We'd like to go through the capital projects though first.
Oh,
So if council's okay, we talk about this operating position, then we'll get into the capital projects.
sure.
We want to talk about all those and get council's approval before we adopt the bylaw. Because once we do the bylaw, all of these things are done. So I'd rather us deal with or talk about and work through these things first before we do any of the readings on the bylaw.
So can we, what we're talking about though is is this, the thing that was the news, operator, the full-time equivalent?
Correct.
So we should be leaving that for now and going on to other things and
No,
coming?
we should be dealing with that now.
Yeah, that's what I was asking about.
Yes.
That's what I wanted. Because it was brought up and we talked about it at our last meeting. And so now we have to decide whether in fact we're in favor of this.
Correct.
Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. So, yes, we did go through it. Seemed like it was very positive. I'd like to ask our director, what are the consequences of not going forward with this? If maybe you could review some of the negative aspects.
The consequences of not going forward with this is, one, your capital programs are going to suffer because again, this is my personal ability to take on as much as I take on. What's going to happen is I'm going to start dealing with more of the operational side of things instead of dealing with the forecasting, capital expenditures, capital programs, etc. So what's going to happen is a lot of these capital programs are going to be sitting on the side of my desk, and when I get to them, I get to them. This person provides that greater capacity in order to start moving some of these larger projects forward, capacity to deal with operating issues, capacity to assist development with their servicing requirements, etc. All that stuff takes time. All that stuff takes time out of my day to do other things. So what's going to happen is I'm going to start pulling back on some of my capital programs to say that I need to offset my operating time with my capital time in order to facilitate the operation of our utility.
Go ahead, Councillor Bennett. And then
Jared, just, we talked about this the other day, I would like to see in here, we do a lot of things with consultants, it costs a lot of money every time you phone those guys. And this person here can take a lot of those phone calls away and save us money, but it'd be nice to sit there and say, okay, it's really costing us $120,000 for this person, but it's gonna save us $40,000 in consultant fees.
Unfortunately, Councillor, I can't give you that number. I can't provide you with a definitive cost of counseling services savings. There will be an opportunity to provide some sort of cost savings with regards to that, because I'm trying to pull more and more stuff in-house. I'm trying to provide the town with enough information within our own capacities to deal with a lot of our stuff instead of dealing with a consultant to get things done. Again, I want to be able to have the resources available to this department to move us forward. And as I've said previously, right now, a lot of this information is held off-site, is held in other people's minds, is held in other people's abilities to provide us with the information. And this position would, again, be able to have that extra person that would have the knowledge in-house, would be able to consolidate that information in some places available for this community. In all honesty, yeah, I don't want to be running to a third-party consultant to ask them about this, that, and the other thing. I want the ability in-house to manage this stuff and have it at our fingertips. I don't know if that answered your question, Councillor Bennett. But
Based on that, I'd be a lot more in favor of it than just, because we're just gonna hire people. And how long their budget keep doing that. But if it's gonna be, there's some offset to it, then it makes a lot more sense.
Councillor Bennett, I think you need to speak into your microphone, which is, am I correct? Yeah, we all need to speak into our microphones when we're speaking. Yeah. Is there anyone else that, yeah, go ahead, Councillor King.
Question. I don't know if this is the right time or the right person, but as we move into the capital projects, per se, thinking on a positive, they got passed, would this person be able to read all that new technology? Or would you train someone in-house, or are we looking at hiring another person to manage all that new electronic stuff you're talking about purchasing?
oh, you're talking about the SCADA system?
Yeah.
Again, I would look to capacity for that individual to be able to support our SCADA system. Having an in-house SCADA tech, that's another full-time job.
But I mean,
But I want this individual to be able to support our SCADA system and understand our SCADA system and try to, again, aid me in moving that $1.6 million program forward, and making sure that we're robust. We're the ability to do things in-house is at a greater
No, I
capacity.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'll ask the question again when we get to this,
Okay.
data, because it sounds like you're gonna need another person besides this person. Okay.
Not at this time, but yeah.
Next year, the year after, once this stuff gets built.
So I'm just gonna throw in my 2 bits worth here. I think water issues are really essential to be looked at very carefully. I do know that as the chair of the Okanagan Basin Water Board, there are a ton of things that throughout the entire Okanagan that that we're looking at and trying to coordinate. And I think that with the number of people that seem to be moving in to the Okanagan, and I'm assuming that's going to increase because as our population goes up, I think we need to be extremely careful with all water issues. So while I'm not crazy about hiring somebody and increasing costs, I do think that this is an important part of dealing with water. And I was just on a conference call yesterday with the International Joint Commission, Lake Osoyoos Border Control, and we had people from Washington and Ottawa and down in the States, and it's a huge issue, and it's something that we have to manage, because if we don't, we can't live without water. So that's just from my point of view. And I do have one other thing. I know that at our last Okanagan Basin Water Board meeting, and I wrote it down somewhere and I can't remember where I've written it down, but it's probably on my desk. There was a grant, the sewerage grant, that we okayed at the last meeting. So it was, have you heard anything from them yet? Because we're getting some money. You got it? Did you get it already? Because we agreed to it.
Our grant has been approved, so our money for this year is coming. That's basically $19,000 covering off our Lacey Point, our Lakeshore Southeast Sector water system, and now the main lift station
Yes.
project, so assisting with towards the debt payments.
Okay, good.
And that's been in our budget, and
Oh, okay, so you had it in the budget already.
Yes.
All right, so it was just passed by the board the other day. Okay, so what are we gonna do with this? Just go ahead, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. So, as a councillor, we have a responsibility to the residents here. What is this person called? Like, what is their official title?
Councillor, their official title will be utility superintendent. That'll be what they will be. So they will deal with our utility as a whole.
Sorry,
Utility superintendent.
utility superintendent,
So
okay.
sewer, water,
Sewer, water, drainage, anything in regards to solid waste, portions of solid waste, I should say.
just to echo Councillor Bennett's comments, if you reduce consulting fees exponentially, it reduces the economic impact to our residents. I don't know how you would ever make that a priority, but it would be very important if we move forward with this, that actually happens. I don't want to turn it into a lecture, but when you try to sell this budget to the general public, it's always good to have those pieces of information. I know you can't put a dollar value on it, but at least a commitment to do that is a very worthwhile endeavor.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. I hear you loud and clear. I've already started down that path, honestly.
Okay, so you're recommending that we add this to the budget? That was what the recommendation is, this council? Anybody like to make a motion one way or another?
Is it not part of the budget already? I thought it
That
was.
is
it is.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but we had to say whether we want to keep it in or not. Am I correct? Or has it already been voted in? It
Well,
hasn't.
I guess if somebody wanted to take it out,
Okay.
this would be the time to do
Take it
that.
out,
So
if
we
you
don't
wanna
have
keep
to
it
vote
in,
it in, we just leave it if we've got it in.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Are there any other concerns about this particular issue? All right, so, thank you. So we're gonna go on to the next,
Okay. So page 28.
28.
Okay, sure.
So this is, again, further in regards to our management of our wastewater treatment lagoons, our treatment cells. This is a capital request to do some desludging and deragging of our cell 1 and cell 2. This is a result of bringing in screening at the main wastewater pump station. So we're looking to remove the last few years of rags and potential sludge that has built up prior to screening in order to improve efficiency of those two treatment cells.
What I like particularly about this is that it could reduce odors from our wastewater system, and I'm certainly hoping it does, because that's a huge issue that we've been dealing with for sure. Anyone else have any
Question?
Yes, go ahead.
It just seems like a big contingency there, about 90,000 here.
There's too many unknowns with this, Councillor King. We don't know how badly everything has been ragged up. We've got a fairly good understanding, but as soon as we start going in and pulling all these aerators, we may end up snapping a few again. The problem is the rags start to congeal on top of our aerators, and we go to pull them, they're heavy. And we've had the socks break off, we've had the aerators fall apart on us. We just were in there this spring to do a little bit of maintenance, but not to this extent. And we had socks fall off, we everything else. So if we start losing socks again and we start losing air, that cost starts to climb. So there's a fairly significant part of unknownness that we're trying to manage.
Now, is this something that comes up every couple of years? Weren't these aerators updated a couple of years ago?
The aerators were just actually updated this spring.
Yeah.
Our fear is the fact that we didn't get all of them up. We don't know how much rag was still sitting in the lagoons.
Well, didn't we took all the water out of the lagoon?
No, we haven't done that for cell 1 or cell 2. Cell 3 was done 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, I thought one of the other ones was
No.
done too. Okay, so until you look at this, you might need new mats and everything.
No, we shouldn't need new liners. No, those have a 25, 30-year life expectancy, if not longer.
And when were they put in?
Could not tell you. Cell 2 was done in cell 3 was done in 2018, and I don't know when cell 1 and cell 2 were done.
They would have been done 2017.
Yeah,
So
2016.
they're all fairly new.
Yeah.
Okay.
But with the main lift, we've got the new
Screen.
The new
screen
screens.
in there, so that once this is done, this shouldn't be something that we ever have to do again.
But
Never-
isn't the new lift supposed to stop a lot of this stuff from going up?
Yeah,
there?
so that's the reason why the screens are put in, is to stop the rags, to stop other foreign objects from coming up into our treatment. The problem is I need to get rid of those foreign objects that are up there now in order to increase efficiency of the treatment process.
So you're saying rags, but what you mean is whatever people have been flushing down the toilets that hasn't been taken out? Okay.
That is correct.
But doesn't that supposed, that goes through our brand new pump house and gets
No.
up there?
So
No.
our new station is removing that prior to being pumped up to lagoons.
Okay.
The problem is, prior to us bringing the new main wastewater pump station online,
Right.
we had all these things sitting in our lagoons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So now I'm removing them all,
Right. Okay.
getting the lagoons cleaned up. So now we've got another 20 years before we go in there again to do this,
Hypothetically.
hypothetically.
Does anybody have a concern with taking this out, or go ahead, Councillor Rhodes?
Thank you. Do not have a concern. I'm curious about what we're going to do with the sludge this time.
The sludge will be heading to our landfill.
Landfill.
And
Did we not pause it in the field beside the?
So those ones there, so when we
Yeah.
desludge 2, there are, I think, half a dozen socks sitting in what we call the test orchard. As part of this program, those socks will be removed and sent up to the landfill.
Oh, okay. Great.
has the new lift station had the screen cleaned since it's been in operation?
We clean the screens daily.
Really?
Yes.
I thought it was going to be once a week or something, but
No, we end up
it's-
spraying. There's large amounts of hair and other interesting things that make their way into a wastewater system. So we're actually having to scrape the screens daily in order just to confirm efficiency. We are getting rid of that sludge weekly.
So you screen it, you take
We
this-
screen out all the unwanted. It
And-
goes into an auger, it gets pushed up, put into a nice clear bag so we get to see what's going on. And that volume of material is being removed weekly, and it's about, probably about, let's say, a ton of material a week.
So a truck goes in there and
Yeah, a
picks
truck
it up?
goes out and picks it
Okay,
up.
I haven't seen the truck yet, and I go
Yeah.
by there all the time, that's why I just wondered.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That's pretty amazing that it has to be done daily. I think we need to get into an education program again, or continue, because people, I don't think, are listening carefully about what should go down the toilet. Toilet paper is the only thing.
That is correct, Your Worship. And we did do a non-flushables campaign there a while ago, but maybe we'll bring it back to the forefront.
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that that's included, because this is, I mean, people should know
Yeah,
that
and-
that's what has to be done
And
on a
should council
daily and
move
a
forward with the
weekly
utility
basis.
superintendent, that would something I would throw on his plate.
Okay, Councillor Rhodes?
I think, yeah, just in support of that, that comment, Mississauga went through a education process, and they called it what not to flush, and it was on their tax information that they got every year, and there was just a very simple list called a do not flush list. So, you know, even that had a little bit of a positive effect.
So we actually reached out, Metro Vancouver has the non-flushable program, and we actually reached out to Metro Vancouver, and we've utilized a lot of their information, pamphlets, videos, and we've pulled them up on our webpage. Might be a good thing we could throw in our annual tax notice, just to say, hey, take a boo, see what you're not supposed to be putting down our wastewater system. But
Because it cost you $400,000 to clean it
Yeah.
out
Yep.
periodically.
It seems to me that I watched that program too, or read about it in Mississauga, that they ended up with their pipes full of grease,
Yep.
like bacon grease and that type of thing.
So-
And it literally clogged it up, so they had to go in and drag it out. That's pretty
So
awful.
there's multiple things that contribute to that. There's what we know as fogs, which are oils, grease, and oils and grease. And then there's also the rags, which are your flushable wipes. They're becoming the bigger culprit in regards to blockages in our wastewater system, because they like to congeal together, and then they start
Yes.
integrating with the fogs and greases in the system, and then they build what we call fatbergs. We do have oil and grease problems in our system. It was very clear when we did our video inspection last year, our CCTV inspections, that we do have grease problems. We do address some of our trouble spots through our flushing programs. But again, we don't address everything, and again, that's something the utility superintendent would be in charge of making sure we're starting to manage that system better.
There's been commercials about this too.
Pardon me?
There's been commercials on Global about this issue.
Yeah.
About flushing.
Oh, and I know that, but we need something specific
for
to
sure.
Esuias, because sometimes people think it doesn't happen here. It just only happens in other places. Okay, so are we okay with leaving this in the budget? I think we have to. Okay, thank you very much. Next is the, yikes, electrical and SCADA upgrades. Mr. Brownstein, you're gonna explain this one?
Thank you, Your Worship. So yes, this is the upgrades to our electrical and SCADA systems for our water and wastewater system. Yes, that is a $1.6 million fund request, but I will remind council this is over 7 years. So this is total project cost at 1.68. We are looking to upgrade all our wastewater stations, our water stations, everything to the latest and greatest in regards to PLCs, HMIs, to provide a little bit of more robust operating systems. What you'll find is with all technology, as it ages, it becomes less and less reliable. So I'd like to get ahead of the curve on that one, and before we start seeing massive failures of any of our systems, we're starting to upgrade these PLCs and these HMIs prior to that. This will also address some of our communication issues between our stations. We'll be looking at going to actually a cellular model. So it'll be actually over data. Cellular data to communicate with other things. We'll also be looking at updating our main HMI up at the yard to provide a more user-friendly interface between us and the SCADA system. This program, we're hoping to be web-based, so we can launch it on any computer, any tablet, etc. I can more easily pull reports, more easily pull trending. Just start to use the SCADA system as it's intended to be used. Right now, it sits there in the background and it calls people every once in a while when something's wrong. That's not the intent of a SCADA system. A SCADA system's here to provide us with data, is to provide us with the ability to operate our systems remotely. We currently don't have that ability. I can't go in and turn on the pump at well 1 remotely. I have to go to well 1 to turn it on. A true SCADA system allows you to have all that functionality from my computer or the operator's tablet. Again, with this, it may reduce some of our call-outs. It may reduce some of our overtime costs. It'll also allow us to better understand what's going on in our system, be able to trend flows, be able to trend everything else, so that I can have an understanding of, it's this was always a fun one in previous places. We knew exactly when it was halftime at the Super Bowl, because we could trend it, so you could see when everybody went in and flushed the toilet and how that reacted to our system. So,
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor King.
What happens if there's a power failure? What do we have in place if this gets passed?
So power failures are done via a battery backup for the PLC. It'll continue to monitor the system and report out. In regards to prolonged power outages, most of our key infrastructure, namely the main water pump station, has a backup generator to power the system at that location. We have 2 portable gensets that we would then distribute into areas where we needed to run the pumps themselves.
Power went out, you've got some ones on the east bench. I can see the backup generator at the main pump station, but how does it get there to here if there's...
That's where we have 2 portable gensets, so we'd go out and power those gensets strategically to pull the effluent where we need to pull it to.
And then I got one question for Mr. Sackville. Are we allowed to go over a 7-year budget? And I thought we were kind of tied in at 5. This is like over 7 years? I know you pretty well got to start to finish, but I thought we had to stop at 5 years.
No, ultimately, what we would like to work towards is actually a 10-year capital budget. You're only committing, there isn't anything in here that you're committing to all of these expenditures with a contract or contractor. These are basically projections of what each year will cost, and where the work is going to be done. But it isn't a contract for somebody to provide those services.
So really, we're only looking at 57,000 for 221?
For this year, but what Jared has done is big picture, showing you what the entire project will cost, which is really beneficial for council when they're considering it.
So, Councillor Harvey has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I see in the water budget the identical amount proposed. Is that a redundancy, or is in fact the project 3.4 million?
No, Councillor Harvey, the total project cost is 1.6, but that 1.6 was divided over water and wastewater.
Okay.
Okay.
So if you take the line items further in the report under budget, you would double those to come up with the 1.6.
Okay, that saved us some money. Good. Councillor Rhodes?
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. How confident are you that these amounts will be fairly accurate over a 7-year period, which is kind of a long period of time? Is there something that could occur that would move that figure up or down, or? And I know you don't have a crystal ball, but your opinion is always good.
Councillor Rhodes, there's always unknowns. As with any project, there's always unknowns. My confidence level in the numbers provided by Exceed are about 80%. again, if there are points where we have cost overruns in regards to this, then I would either extend the program into further years or look at cost savings for that particular year in order to justify the budget amounts. I'm hoping that, and again, talking to Exceed, these are fairly inflated costs, to use the lack of a better terminology. I don't have any concerns with coming within budget with any of these upgrades.
Okay, so, your 57,770 is being asked for this year. What does that include? What's that for phase one?
So phase one is the initial upgrades to our main HMI, so our main human machine interface. So that would be the computer up at
Okay.
Public Works.
Okay,
So that's the software upgrade to provide us with the ability to do what we need to do remotely and access our portals.
okay. I can see for your, for phase two and that type of thing, but I was just confused about phase one. Okay, so you had a question, Councillor Bennett.
Jim, how does this work with the areas 8 and 9? Like when we do this budget and we put in there and we're gonna do this and we supply water to the band in areas 8 and 9.
Yep.
So we put this into our budget here.
Yep.
Don't they pay a part of that cost?
Yeah, so this capital project is also in our water projects. And it's being funded through that as well. So the rate increases for the town and the water district, even though the percentages are different, the dollar value increase is exactly the same. So yes, water district, town water are being affected by any of these, by this project in particular.
So the $1.6 million is not just all the town of Vesuvius that's gonna pay for that?
No, there will be part of the water district user fees that are users that are paying towards that as well, yes.
Thank you.
It's the 1.6 that we saw first that was scary, that's all, but then it makes sense, doesn't it, once you break it down? Okay, so, is everybody okay if we leave this in the budget? Over 7 years? All right, thank you. So my assumption is that the next one, according to my book, is the survey equipment. Page 79. I'll wait for Mr. Brownstein to figure that out. It looks like it's the next part.
Scroll through. Too much detail in the report, Your Worship.
Pardon me?
So I put too much detail in the report. I'm scrolling through it all.
Okay.
Yes, this is a survey equipment. This is a carry forward from last year. This was budget approved in 2020 to complete survey equipment for the operations department. And that $75,000 is the total cost of the project over water, wastewater, and general revenue.
So this was a carryover project,
Yes.
so it was already been budgeted?
It's already been budgeted for.
Okay,
I just have a question.
go ahead.
Yeah, I got no problem. I'm just trying to understand it. The 75,000, is that like a big software program with like a new computer to store it in?
So the 75,000 is for the actual physical GPS equipment. So it'll be a station up at the yard. It'll be a rover. It'll be a data collector, and any software that's required to download that data onto applicable GIS platforms or AutoCAD platforms.
So what's your definition of a rover? Someone's gonna go
When
take
you
a
guys
picture?
when you see people going out doing legal surveys, usually you see a guy with a pogo stick with a little data collector and a round thing on top.
Yeah.
That's a rover. And then we'd have a base station, which is the station sitting at the yard that references geographically where we are in the world.
Okay.
And then we can go out and start shooting our manholes, start shooting our hydrants, and start shooting all these things. So we actually have true representation of our utilities out in the world, real world. What we're finding right now is our GIS platform is spatially incorrect in a lot of places. It'll show that our main is here, but it's actually over here.
So how does this get fixed with a new equipment? How do you,
So we would go out, Your Worship, and actually physically take a northern, easting, and elevation of that particular asset. So we'd go out and, for survey terminology, we'd shoot that manhole And we know that because we're calibrated and we're back to the base station at the yard, which is then calibrated to UTM coordinates, we know where we are in relation to that.
Okay.
So then we can shift our whole GIS and say, no, now our aerial makes sense to where things are in the world. Our property lines now match up to where things are in the world. So when our guys go out to go find that valve, instead of looking over there, they're looking here where it's supposed to be.
Okay.
So you keep track of your stuff.
Thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Rhodes and then Councillor Harvey.
I'm curious about why it was carried over, and is the possibility that may happen again this year?
I hope not. This came down to a capacity with me personally. With COVID, everything else that was going on, and honestly, Councillor, I ran out of time to get this out. I had full intention to try to get it out in the fall, and I just didn't get it out. So I'm hoping to get it out this spring and get this stuff here and in use by the summer.
If there was a possibility that that may not happen, this would be a good item to maybe perhaps take out or defer it for another year.
Yep. It's the problem is it's already been budgeted for. You're using 2019 numbers or 2020 numbers to deal with 2020 stuff. So the funding is there. I mean, Mr. Zackel might be a better person to answer that question than me, and how that looks in regards to deferring that project.
So ultimately, if we defer that project, we'd be utilizing future revenues or reserves to pay for that. So what it does is lessens the impact of reserves for the current year or current budget package, and defers it for a year, basically.
Okay, do you have another one? Okay, and then Brian, you're next, just a minute.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Well, I think it's one of those kind of things where this is a pretty rich budget that we're dealing with in uncertain economic times right now. If this is not a big priority, maybe that should be an option for us right now. That's all I was trying to say.
That's council's discretion, Councillor.
Yeah.
Councillor Harvey?
A question. I mean, echoing Councillor Bennett's comment on the last project, I see at the end of the report that doing this, you won't have to rely going forward on third-party surveyors to confirm locations of manholes, et cetera. So there's a money-saving element to this. I read between the lines. I mean, it would be good to have that out front in these reports, where we know the dollar amount, put that in, where we don't, just indicate what we pay for that kind of stuff. The second point or question is, I take it that when you initiate this project, it's going to be, we're not going to have to hire a person to actually go out with the rover and take measurements. It's going to be out of your staff. Like it's operational, it'll become an operational item.
That is correct, Councillor Harvey. It will be an operational item.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, are you going to sort of keep that in mind? I mean, to me, it sounds like it should be front and center because we've already agreed to it before, but can we leave that, put it on the side and see where we are at the end of this and see whether we actually want to listen to what Councillor Rhodes has said and take it off, or can we leave it there for now, Councillor Rhodes? And then as an option, maybe later if we've run out of money?
Yeah, well, there's always a presumption that the councillors know everything. I'm going to let it be known to anybody that's listening, that is not true.
That's true, yeah.
If this is not a high priority item, if it's not an essential thing that we do this year, then I see positive input into the budget by not having it in this particular budget.
So you're making that as kind of a motion then, that you'd like us to consider, or can we set it at the side of the table and deal with it at the end and see if where we're at?
That would be acceptable if we could just leave that till the end and see. I mean, I don't know what the process is. If we want to take it out of the
Is that not an
budget,
option, to put something on the side and then look at the end and say, yes, we want to include it, or no, we don't?
Yeah. So it basically is a 1.65% impact on our rate increase is basically what it works out to. It's either a 1.65 impact on rate increase or it's $25,000 in reserve funds.
Okay. Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, following up on Councillor Rose's comment, and further to my clarification question earlier on the capital or the operating amounts, that's operating surpluses. So these projects don't contribute, the amounts shown for these capital projects don't contribute to a tax increase in 2021, is my understanding. Rather, the increase comes from hiring the new full-time equivalent, paying for more chlorine, et cetera, those kinds of what you show in your initial report. Yeah. These come out of operating surpluses or reserve. And so they don't end up being leading to a dollar increase for the taxpayer. Is that correct, Mr. Zacco?
You are correct in that assumption. It's just if we repurpose the funds, then it comes into play. The survey equipment in the 2020 budget was allocated from sewer operating revenues from 2020. And what's happening is those unused sewer operating funds were being transferred to reserves to pay for this moving forward.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Okay, so I mean, now that we're into this part, capital projects, it's really a discussion of, you know, which ones to fund out of reserves or surplus, and which ones not to fund. Like I go back to, I mean, my concern is on the first report, which is the increase to the taxpayer. That's my primary concern. But certainly these projects, you know, some are more important than others. But, you know, on the first report, the increase to the taxpayer is, you know, is not to pay for this project in 2021. It's coming out of operating surplus and or reserves.
Okay. So can we, do you still think we should take it out, or are you okay with the explanation, Councillor Rhodes?
Well, if we're going to do that, I would like to see it come out, because my argument always is that it can be repurposed,
Yes.
which would have a positive effect to the taxpayer.
Yep.
That's my simplistic viewpoint of it.
And that's ultimately the case. The funds can be repurposed and reallocated. Basically, what we're trying to accomplish is have that surplus operating revenues available for capital projects. How that gets distributed is council's discretion. We want to build up those reserve operating reserves, so it gives us that ability to do capital projects. So we don't want to have that be reduced. But there are times where hard decisions have to be made, and repurposing those funds are a question. So.
Well, we could move this to 222 too if we chose.
Yep.
So it's still kind of on the books.
So I'm not quite sure how to proceed with this. Do we take a vote on this then? Is that what you would see, Mr. Chabot?
Yeah, you would be changing the bylaw then, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we'd be.
Because funding sources would change.
Yep.
So you'd wait till the end of the discussion and say you want to amend the bylaw by removing this, this, and this.
Is that
Yeah, I
okay?
think we just table it till later.
Okay,
We-
fair
that's
enough.
how we usually
Thank
do
you.
it.
No, appreciate, all right, so next we have the wastewater treatment lagoons operational assessment. This sounds like you've changed it, and it was you, we've already discussed this. No? No.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is again a carry forward from 2020. This project is 75% complete. I just need the last little bit of funding to make sure that we get the report that we've asked for. So this is a carry forward to complete the project.
And it's 75,000 to complete the project?
No, I don't believe it's a full
No, so
75,000.
this is the 2020 budget amount.
Yep.
Only the
Unused.
unused amount will be carried forward in the actual financial plan and budget. But for council to see it, I wanted to put in the 2020 amounts so that council was aware of those.
So how much, so we haven't paid any of this yet, or we have paid some of it?
We have paid some of it, your worship, and there'll be,
How much do we have left?
we've got 60,000 left?
Yeah.
Yeah.
60,000
Yes,
left?
that is correct.
We have to spend that whole 60 and 21 for, move this project forward?
Yeah.
I can support this, I mean, we're already into it, and it was in 220's budget.
So actually, it's not 75,000, it's 60,000 that we're including in the budget. Okay. We okay with this? All right. Next is the wastewater treatment lagoons monitoring well installation.
So thank you, worship. That again is a carry forward from 2020. It will be the full $25,000 to
You'll need
complete
the
this
whole
project.
amount. Any concerns about this one? Okay, we'll leave that one in. Now it's the next one, the demolition of the old wastewater pump station. Can you explain, Mr. Brownstein, why there's such a high amount to taking out a pump station and a building? It seems like a phenomenal amount of money, and I'm sure there's a good reason. So could you explain this, please?
Thank you, your worship. $150,000 is a best guess of mine of how much this thing is going to cost to demo it. We had a asbestos assessment done on it. So there is asbestos in the building, so it's going to have to be abated. There is lead paint in the building, which has to be abated. As soon as you start getting into abatement requirements, your costs go through the roof. So all that stuff has to be abated before we go in and actually demo anything. The wet well itself, I have concerns in making sure that it's structurally sound before we decommission it. I want to make sure that it's done right, and that, of course, that costs money. Again, looking to concrete cap it, make sure that it's never going anywhere. I don't want all of a sudden a sinkhole to appear in 5 years down the road and everybody starts pointing fingers. We want to remove the genset out, and we actually want to keep it. I'm going to end up probably putting something forward next year for that to be put into the yard and now rigged up to be our standby power for future use. So I'm repurposing the genset.
Can you explain what happens when you have things with the lead paint and the asbestos? How do you deal with that, or do you have to hire somebody?
So we
come
had to
in?
bring somebody in. We had to bring in an abatement company to come in and remove the asbestos from the site. So they had to come in and they basically shroud the entire building in plastic. They have HEPA filters, negative pressure. They're going in suited up, fully SCBA, and they're going in and they're removing all lead product. They're removing all asbestos product from the facility prior to the demolition company coming in with an excavator or taking it apart in pieces or whatever they're going to do. There's also all the electrical removal, all the piping removal. Backfilling the wet well is not going to be cheap because that's going to be full drain rock in order to give myself a good sense of feeling for myself structurally. It's then going to be capped with a concrete cap to make sure that it never moves and we never get a sinkhole up here in that area. So this is my best guess at this cost. In all honesty, I'm hoping it comes in less than $150,000. But again, when you're demoing an older building built in, I think, probably the early 40s, there's going to be unknowns that even our assessment company wasn't aware of. And when you start dealing with those types of unknowns, your costs go up.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any concerns about this? And I'm assuming that you do this sort of bit by bit because you have different groups that need to come in and deal with different issues.
So what we'll
are
probably
in
do,
there.
Your Worship, is actually tender this out as a demolition, and that person who comes in to demo will be responsible for the asbestos abatement and everything else,
everything.
and they will coordinate what they need to coordinate to get the job done.
And some money will turn it back into green space. So
We will turn it back into green space, yes.
Okay, good, we all right with this? See, it gets easier as we go on, doesn't it?
Got a
We're
ways
not-
to go yet.
Yeah. Okay, next is, okay, this is another one. The main wastewater pump station landscaping.
So yes, Your Worship, this is a carry forward from 2020. This is funding to make sure that everything is tickety-boo at the main water pump station. This paid for our fencing, et cetera, to make sure that our facility is looking sharp. I probably will use some of this funding to complete the landscaping after demolition.
So some of this money has already been spent.
That is
In other
correct.
words, to put up the
Yeah, to put up the fencing.
which I appreciate for sure. We've had lots of comments about that. So this would be the total, but some of it's already been spent.
That is correct.
So do you have any idea then what you're asking for this year? That was what was originally.
This is the original budget. I'm not sure what the actual carry forward amount is, Your
So
Worship.
likewise, it's just basically the operating surplus or reserves that were utilized towards this will be carried forward to pay for this.
Okay. All right. We okay with this? Wastewater pipe condition assessment.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is what I'm proposing is a 5-year capital plan to assess the condition of all our wastewater pipe in the system. So this is where we'd go in and do future cammering to signify where we have structural deficiencies in our pipes, where we have fog and grease and other buildups. I'm also looking to branch this out into manhole assessments, etc. Manhole infrastructure is usually overlooked when we're doing underground assessment, but manholes are, again, a key piece of infrastructure. They fail, you've got a big hole in the road. This one, again, is very conditional on whether or not we're successful in obtaining granting from FCM. We will do our best to try to utilize as much cost offset as we can to make this project move forward. Currently it's sitting, if we aren't successful with grant funding, we won't do this right now. This may become more of a pressing issue in the near future.
So is 70,000 the total amount, and you're hoping to get an 80% grant?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So this one's, we're not sure because it could be, we don't get the grant, it stays in this stage for now.
Yep.
Okay. Relocation of the Janko wastewater lift station. Just wanted to point out that the reason that it was called the Janko lift station is because Stan and Doreen Janko owned that property there on the corner, and it was the only time that Asuyas had a car dealership. And it didn't, I mean, it lasted for quite a while, I think, but then they found that people were normally going to Penticton or Kelowna or something to get their cars. But that was all their property there, and that's why it's called that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship, and I even spelled it right this time.
Yes,
Made sure I
thank
corrected
you.
that for you. This is a carry forward from 2020. The project is currently underway. There is unspent amounts that will be carried forward to 2021 to complete this project. We are hoping completion end of May 2021. So again, this is a carry forward of an approved project that unfortunately, didn't get started soon enough in the season.
Okay. Anybody have any concerns about this one? And it will be started soon?
It's already started, Your Worship.
Okay.
They've already
that's what
started
I
breaking
thought,
ground.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Now with this one, the original budget was
Oh, there's a-
545,000.
Got it. I got
Oh,
it.
sorry, I forgot to mention that. Yeah.
So what Jared's also requesting is 20,000 in additional funds to ensure that this project's completed within budget.
So we've already okayed the 545.
Yes.
And we just asking for an additional
No,
20
sorry,
this
Your
year.
Correct.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question for Mr. Zackel, and it's really just, reading these again. So I look at on page 27 all of these projects, including this one, and so it shows 20,000 operating and 545 reserves, but Mr. Brownstein tells us that this project is underway. That is, some monies are coming out of the 2020 budget. So I would have to think that for 2021, the amount would be reduced by
Absolutely.
but you don't report it that way.
No, I put in the total amount so that council is aware of the total budget related to that. Because the expenditures are coming in, we should have reflected that in the actual report to say so much was spent already. That would have been some of assistance to us. So my apologies on that.
Thank you.
Yes. All right, so it's really just the 20,000 that's coming out of the 2021 budget? Okay, thank you. It looks scary when we see the project costs. All right, we're going to go to wastewater system improvements. I hope we don't have to pay all of this. Oh, good, we don't.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, this is the department's wanting to try to forecast out greater than next year. I'm trying to build the 5-year capital. I'm really going to try to start moving towards a 10-year capital program for these utilities, so you guys have an understanding of what's coming down the turnpike in the greater future. So this is a capital request for an ongoing program over the next 5 years to address the one-off issues in our system, where we have deteriorating manholes, where we have sections of pipe that are reverse grade, where we have sections of pipe that have sagged. So the initial cost in 2021 is $20,000. We'll look to bring somebody in to assist, or should we be successful with utility superintendent, a summer student to come in and prepare that list for us, to say that, you know, we need to replace X, Y, and Z manholes. We need to look at this section of pipe to get it redesigned. And again, this is interaction with the operating staff to further understand, you know, what challenges we're having in our system. And then we will look at, you know, $220,000 every year for the next 5 years to address those issues. We will also look at potentially starting an inspection chamber installation program on our wastewater system. Right now, a lot of our what we call laterals are undefined, so there is no clear point of private to public. A lot of municipalities have put what we call inspection chambers, or ICs, at the property line to define that limit. So if I have a blockage between the IC and the main, that's the town's problem. If there's a blockage between the IC and the building, that's the private property's problem. Right now, we have a hard time defining that because we're having to now scope the line, try to trace it, figure out where the property line is, and reference all this stuff back. It's not as cut and dry. It also allows us now to manage and maintain our laterals effectively, so we can go in and actually flush our laterals to deal with any blockages on our side of the problem. We can go in and root cut. We can go in and get rid of grease, and et cetera. So again, this program is looking at the long-term goals of trying to bring our system up to today's standards.
Okay. So it's just sort of the planning for it that's in the budget for this year?
The planning for is
And
this
then
year. Next year is when we start getting into the nitty-gritty of
220,000 for the next 4, yeah.
And what'll happen is if we have a particular instant where, we need 400 grand to replace it, what I will do is look to now say, okay, I'm not spending any in 2022, but I'll take my 2022 budget and my 2023 budget and take that 400,000 and then address the problem.
Okay. Any concerns about this one?
Makes sense to me.
Okay. Well, it looks like it's better than we originally thought when we started looking at all this money, eh? Okay, so, that's the end of the, oh, no, we're still in sewer.
So-
Okay, so what are we gonna do next? Are we gonna have a look at this, the 5-year?
Yeah, so Worship, I wouldn't mind discussing the 5-year
Sure.
capital with council. So the ones I just want to highlight is an asset management / master plan for 2022 at $75,000. This is long overdue. We need some asset management planning. We need some capital planning and master planning of our water systems, our wastewater systems, our road systems, basically all our major assets. So in 2022, we're looking at spending that $75,000 for, and it will be a third-party consultant coming in and providing us with that asset management plan and that master plan to say, you're going to start replacing X, Y, and Z starting 2023, and it's going to cost you this much. In 2024, you're going to start replacing this. 2025, you're going to start replacing this. And it's going to spread you out over that 20-year capital so that you're not getting the sticker shock when I come to you for, $3.5 million in 6 or 7 years to say, yeah, we need to fix that. Sorry. It'll address our pump stations, our lift stations. It'll address the management of any of our underground assets. It'll address the management of all our above ground assets in regards to the wastewater system. So, you know, when are we doing pipe replacement? How are we doing pipe replacement? Are we doing cast in pipe, which is no dig type installations, or are we actually digging this section up? How are we replacing manholes? When are we replacing manholes? When are we replacing lift stations? When are we upgrading pumps? And then it'll look at the master plan. So how are we providing a greater service to the community in the future? When are we upgrading the main going, for instance, the main wastewater pump station to a larger capacity because of growth? So this is a pretty big comprehensive package to provide the community with the knowledge and the ability. And again, Councillor Harvey alluded to this a few council meetings ago about when we start looking at these individual people coming into our system, we have no idea how that's going to impact our growth and what necessitates what when these people start coming in. So this plan will provide us with that guidance, and to say that if you were to grow to 6,000 people in 2023 and we grow to 10,000 people by 2030, here's what you need to do.
Okay. So are we not required to have an asset management plan by the provincial government?
I'll let CEO Chabot
Is that
answer
not
that
correct,
question.
Mr. Chabot?
No, you're not
Oh.
necessarily required to have one. Certainly, it's going to impact your success rate with senior government grants.
Mm-hmm.
I think the ship has pretty much sailed on the opportunity to get grants to support the development of asset management plans, much like it's passed for integrated community sustainability plans, or installation of water meters. So we're a little behind in terms of our preparedness with respect to asset management planning across all manner of capital assets and infrastructure in the community. So I'm really pleased to see the process at least getting started, and we got to start taking a hard look at our assets, because as council knows, the cost of maintaining, repairing, replacing, extending, operating continues to climb, and I think that it'll pay dividends in the long run for planning and then operating our systems.
Okay. Go
So-
ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Jared, when we have to do the underground, like go in with the cameras and do all that kind of stuff first before you could come up with this plan to know what's...
So we have
Needs to be
some
done.
cameraing already completed, Councillor Bennett. It would help. It's not necessary. What you can do is build it mostly by age of pipe and start to look at it that way. And what we can do is if we are having concerns in a certain section, we can go in and camera at that point and say, no, we've got another 5 years, so we're going to then adjust our asset management plan to reflect that change in that asset. Again, this is a guiding document for council to understand that as you replace your assets, your costs are going to go like this over time. What we want to try to do is flatten that curve a bit. So if you look at the next one, I've set aside $500,000 a year for 3 years. That's me taking my best guess at what this asset management plan could be. It may be higher, it may be lower. I don't know, but it was just to kind of put a placeholder in your guys' mind saying, we need to start thinking about replacing this infrastructure and moving it forward. If we have nothing in, say, 2023, 2024, 2025, then you put that $500,000 in reserves. So you flatten the curve in 2026, because then you can just pull that money back out. But these are big numbers. I just wanted to present it to council to kind of get the thought process going in that direction. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Go ahead, Councillor Rhodes.
Question for the CAO. Would it be not more advantageous to do an overall asset management plan rather than breaking out individually? This is only one aspect of our assets.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate to do it by asset class and to have each class fund their own. So this will be an asset management plan for your sanitary sewer system. You'll have a proposal for one for your water system. You'll need to do one from general taxation for your roads. In some communities, they've established stormwater management drainage as a utility service as well. We haven't done so here And I don't believe there's significant stormwater infrastructure in the community, so it's probably not necessary. The majority of it's running down our main street. But the plan has to come together into an overarching document, a strategic asset management plan, and it's too bad we weren't a little sooner to the funding opportunities, the green municipal funds that would have helped do this some years ago. Because yeah, eventually it'll become chapters in an overall plan, I guess. And I don't know, I like to think about how to eat an elephant. It's one bite at a time, and this is a big thing.
Okay.
So you'll never forget that analogy. Councillor King?
Yeah, I would support leaving this in. I think the way Jared's talking about trying to look 10 years out or 20 years out, I like that this down the road as a depreciation report for a strata. It gives you what year you have to do something, so all of a sudden we could look ahead 3 years, well, this is coming up, or even help remind Jared of something possibly. I think it's a major asset. I would leave it.
Okay, is that,
Yeah, Your Worship, that's fine. The rest of it was reflected in the reports provided to
okay,
council.
so that was the 75,000 that we talked about earlier?
No, this, again, Your Worship, this is 2022 budget
Yes.
and beyond. So you're not debating 2022 budget
Okay,
from
yeah.
a rate perspective. I just wanted to bring this to council's attention
Okay.
that this is coming
right.
down the turnpike.
Thinking ahead.
All right, so is there anything else that we need to, Mr. Zackel, do we have to now go through and make sure that we're agreed with everything on the bylaw?
Well, ultimately, if council is in agreement with all of the operating items and capital, then it would be giving first readings to the sewer amendment bylaw, or sewer bylaw, pardon me. Impacts, if we change something from the capital, that was funded from reserves, it basically has a compound effect to us. As an example, that $25,000 survey equipment, if we were taking those reserve funds that we've got allocated this year to reduce our impact of operating, that would have an effect of $110,407 over a 5-year period to our reserve funds. So if you're wanting to reduce operating funds, you're better off to impact operating rather than capital in that respect, or do something with the capital project that has operating tie into it.
And what
So-
about the item we put on the side?
Well, that would be what the impact is by doing that to that project. Our overall revenues over 5 years would be impacted by $110,407. That being said, that's how much more in reserves we'd have to draw down to pay for that. You'd be taking your annual money available to do capital projects, which is $314,290, which isn't a large balance as it is, and reducing that by $25,000 in year one.
So what do you think, Councillor Rhodes?
Well, that does confuse it somewhat.
Yeah.
I still did not get the impression that this was something that was essential. Based on the 100 times I've said it already, if we're not already, we soon will be in tough economic times. Every dollar is important. So I'd like to put a motion on the floor to withdraw this from the budget.
Is there a seconder for that?
I'll make a second for discussion.
Okay.
Sorry, Councilor Rhodes, withdraw or defer?
I'd like to see it withdrawn.
Completely in its entirety?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I got the wording right, so there would be a budget amendment first, or same process we went through before, or?
Hang on, we have to figure out whether
Yeah.
everybody agrees with this first. And so withdraw or defer is it likely, go ahead, Councillor.
Did it get seconded, Your Worship? You
It
seconded
did,
it? Okay.
yes, it did.
I didn't comment when this was first discussed by council, just letting you have the room to have the conversation. But I think Mr. Bronstein has asked for this equipment because he believes that it's needed for the operation and that it will enhance operational efficiency, it will enhance asset management planning, it will serve utility supervisors' needs as he gathers more data about our systems. I heard that it was going to, over time, as we got a better handle on where our assets really were, it was going to lead to operational efficiencies and cost savings. And so I personally think it would be nice to have. Is it absolutely necessary? No, probably not. But will it pay dividends in the immediate and the longer term? I believe it would. So that's just my comment on that one. I don't think it impacts the budget in a major way. We've still got to think about how we're going to deal with the economic challenges coming and what we're going to do with the restart grant that the province has provided to our community. And I think that's going to be one of the ways that council is going to be able to deal with the impacts of a fragile economic picture coming forward and getting worse every day.
So can I just ask, the motion was to take it out, not defer, am I correct? Okay. I don't think I can agree with that. I think if we're gonna do anything, I think it needs to be deferred and that we should leave it in there. However, go ahead, Councillor
I'd say
King.
to say, I voted so we could discuss it.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it get deferred. We're talking about hiring a new person, and maybe he would have some input at that time too on the real needs of this, so I could see deferring it.
Councillor Harvey, Councillor Bennett, any concerns?
Just a question to Mr. Zackel. If we deferred it, is that gonna have the same $100,000 impact?
So by
As it
deferring
is?
it, we're
Yeah.
basically just deferring the use of the reserve. So there really is no impact on the increase in operating costs. If council is looking to try to figure out a way of reducing that 5.2% increase, what I would suggest is, again, that new grant funding that we've got, in our operating expenditures, we got a perfect item in there, which we were talking about, equipment financing for a pickup truck and 5-ton crane. Well, there's two items that for the 2020 budget or 2021 budget, you'd be reducing it by $11,000, which is just under, it's about 0.8%. So there's a a perfect fit for us, and it also reduces the annual operating cost for that 5-year period as well. So there's something that council can consider that would work in this situation.
Okay. Councillor Harvey, I was gonna let you have go ahead with whatever you had.
Yeah, no, my comment is, I think it should stay in and allow operations to get on with it for the longer term benefits.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor that we would remove this amount from the budget. So has everybody had their, so let's have a vote on whether we should remove that. All in favor? Against? Okay, that's defeated. So can we, would you like to entertain another motion that we either leave it in or defer it? Is there anybody who would like to make that a motion?
Well, it'll be left in there.
It will, so in other words, but are we leaving it in for this year or are we deferring it till next? Is that not what I'm?
Well, right now it'd be just stay in, unless we make a motion to defer.
Yes, well, that's what I'm wondering. Do you want to leave it in or do you want to defer it? I mean, leave it in for this year or defer it to next. If we don't do anything, it automatically stays in.
I say leave it in.
All right, so nobody's got a motion, therefore it stays in. Am I correct? Is that how that works? Okay. So that, I'm thinking that is the end of the sewer. Am I correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Okay. Before we go on to the water issue.
No.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The bylaw.
So then, basically, then council has to give first three readings to the sewer user fee bylaw.
Okay, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, I was noticing that we hadn't moved on the first report and the budget, which is looking at page 20. This is where the 5.2% or $280 increase for sewer operating budget really comes
$15 increase.
to hit the taxpayer, a lot less so than the capital projects, in my view. And so I'm going to speak against, for this year, the utilities superintendent, which is where most of the increase appears to come from, with the attendant costs of financing costs for a new pickup truck.
Okay, thank you. So are you making that motion that we would take that out of the budget?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Is there a seconder for that?
Yeah, I'll put it on the table.
Okay, seconded by Councillor King. So, anybody else? Go
I
ahead.
don't understand, is that taking like the person out and then the vehicle, or just the vehicle?
It takes both.
Both. It
Oh.
takes-
Yeah, so the impact to the sewer budget would be $40,126, which is basically 2.7% the rate increase.
So instead of 5.2 would be 2.7.
Yeah, but that also will, yeah. So it'd be a 2.5. Now we're getting down, I caution council with respect to that because that looks good. But then any future sources of revenue could be impacted. So it's,
So, I'm going to speak against that motion because I think that, from what I've heard over all these projects, that a utility superintendent, is probably a good thing for us to have, not only for sewer, but for water and for the landfill. So just in listening this morning, I'm convinced that it's something that should stay in. And I agree that the increase seems high, but I'm thinking we might be able to offset that with some of the money that we got. So I would prefer to leave it in. Is there anyone? Go ahead, Mr. Chabot.
Your worship, again, I just want to speak in support of this as being included in the budget. Combined operating and capital for sewer and water next year is around $13 million. A full year's cost of this additional resource is 1% of that amount. I think it's important that we develop the capacity to make wiser investment decisions, to better manage our infrastructure, to look for savings on operational and capital procurement through more professionalism and more resources. And I think we're expecting far too much of too few people, and that's why we've got carry forwards and budgets and work doesn't get completed. I think it can enhance our opportunities for senior government grants, and I believe it would be a prudent investment for the community. And the reduced reliance on professional consulting, better in-house information leads to better decisions. So I just wanted to speak in support of leaving it in.
Thank you. Can I ask Mr. Zackel first? Go ahead.
the other thing is there is the equipment financing component in this budget, the $11,000, where we can utilize that grant that we received to pay for these pieces of equipment, which would definitely assist reducing the rate. It would reduce the rate for, basically, it impacts the rate over a 5-year period, so it's a benefit for our taxpayers throughout that whole process. It also affects not only the sewer budget, but it'll affect the water budget, and I believe even and general as well.
Okay.
So this is one that fits all three, which would assist us. And it's basically a 0.725% decrease to that 5.2% request.
Thank you. Go ahead,
Just
Councillor
for
King.
clarity, if this gets passed to hire this person, is this a contract person or like a QP person?
No, this is a full-time exempt position, so this would be a management position.
So it'd be a contract, and like, I guess, working out the details, it'd be 3 or 5 year contracts or?
It would be with, I'll let that answer CO show, but it'd be a employment contract with the town.
Your worship, one of the things I'd like to improve is the standard form of employment contract for exempt employees. The majority are on contracts without term. And so they just carry forward each year, and then there's severance provisions in them. It really comes down to council's preference. My familiarity with term contracts is they're often more limited to the CAO position, where you're on 3 or 5 years, and then you need to continue to prove your worth in order to be renewed.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor Kordoff. So I'm conflicted with this. At our last meeting, I was not conflicted, but I'm going to speak against the motion for 2 reasons. First one being, every year during our AGM, our annual general meeting, we are criticized about the amount of money that we spend on consulting and engineering. And whether it's right or wrong, it's something that the public is very much aware of because it's a huge dollar item on our budget every year. And secondly, I have every confidence in our director to reduce the impact to our budget by reducing those consulting and professional fees. So I'm gonna speak against the motion for those 2 reasons.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against this motion? Okay, so we are ready to take the vote. Could you read the motion, please, Mrs. Hilson?
Sorry, I'm just looking for it. That the utility superintendent be removed from the 2021 sewer budget.
Good, and that was moved and seconded.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask for a vote on this. All in favor of removing this? Thank you. We have one. All in favor of against the motion? Against the motion? Thank you. So that motion is defeated. So my assumption is we do not have to have a motion to leave it in. It's already in then if we haven't. Okay. So thank you, everybody. I mean, good discussion and good, looking at all the issues that come up. And of course, that's the whole idea, is for us to bring out everything that might be for or against. Go ahead. Is there a concern?
Yeah, so before we get back to the sewer rates bylaw, because like I said, hearing Councillor Harvey, the issue is the increase of 5.2%. If council passes a resolution to pay for the pickup truck and the 5-ton crane utilizing our COVID relief fund grant funding, which totally fits within the allowable expenditure, we can reduce this budget by $11,000, which basically lessens that rate increase by 7.25%. It changes the single-family residential increase from $14.65 down to $12.61. So it is a win. It definitely
Reduce the increase in future years as
it
well,
reduces the increase in future years, so it's another benefit for council moving forward.
So
It
tell me
does-
what the increase would be. Instead of 520, it would now
It
be?
would be, instead of 5.2, it would be 4.475.
4.475. Okay. Thank you. I know. I will ask, go ahead, Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I appreciate that it fits that grant, but I would like to see a plan, a wholesome plan as to what we're going to do with that money, rather than chip away at it piecemeal. That's all I want to see.
Thank you. And I think we've kind of held off on that because we're not quite sure where it might be needed. But this is just a tiny bit, isn't it,
Yeah.
that we're
Well,
looking at?
This would affect not only the
Yeah.
sewer, this would affect the entire operation. It affects the sewer budget, it affects the water budget, and it actually affects the tax increase, because these expenses are rolled out into all three funds.
Okay.
So this was where the payment of this or utilization of this funds would assist in all areas.
So what are we taking out of the 1.6 approximately?
What were those financing costs, do you remember?
So do we need a motion then to use some of that money from the money that we got from the province in order to pay for the two items?
Okay, we need to reduce this.
Let me quickly run upstairs and I'll grab those numbers, as I've got it on my
We'll stop
spreadsheet.
for lunch, it's all right.
No, well, do we want to get this part finished before we have lunch, or is lunch
It
here?
would be probably nice to get it finished.
Okay,
It'll just take me a couple seconds to grab
good,
it.
thank you very much, Mr. Zackel. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor
Councillor
McCullough.
Rhodes.
Well, just so I can repeat myself again for now the fifth or sixth time, I would be very much opposed to using any of that money for anything regarding our budget right now. I'll say over and over and over again, I think we have financial impacts that are going to be very negative to our community. We don't know what they are. We have an opportunity to leave money in our bank account right now, and that can be our reserve to fight that battle in the future.
Good, thank
Guess
you.
I'd look at it the other way. I mean, if we stayed with this budget, we're impacting our residents now. This actually saves a little bit. And I guess it really comes down, if it's 20 or 30,000 or if it's 600,000, then I could see keeping a reserve. So I really want to wait and see how much it really is, because it does impact our residents.
I agree, and I don't think I think it's a very small amount. I would absolutely agree with you, Councillor Rhodes, if it was a large amount of money and we hadn't looked at the whole budget. But I'm thinking this may not be very much, and it might not impact it. So can we listen to, hear what Mr. Zackel has first? Go ahead, Mr. Zackel, when you're ready.
Okay, so it's a total of $45,000 for the pickup truck and $100,000 for the replacement of the 5-ton crane. So it's an impact of overall 23,000 roughly in 2021, 29,000 in the years beyond to our operating budgets overall.
Go ahead, Councillor Bennett.
When you say that 45,000, 100,000,
Yes.
are you saying we're only gonna take the 3,900 out for next year and the rest of that doesn't come out of there?
Well,
Or are we taking the
ultimately,
145,000?
It affects our 5-year operating budgets. So in our sewer operating, under the line item of equipment financing or equipment costs, that'll affect our 5-year operating capital, so it'll reduce each of those years by paying for this from other sources of monies.
So it'll only be the 3,900 that comes out of that extra funds we have?
No, $145,000 is what would come out of our the grant money that we have, is basically what we need to make this happen.
So you're saying we spend the 145 on capital and it'll save us 60 or 70,000 over the 5 years?
Well, it's basically saving you your tax increase,
Yeah.
request of tax increase. It's saving on your user fee increases for both water and sewer. So it's saving, in the big picture, overall $145,000. For sewer as an example, yeah, it's 11,000 in year one, but it's it's more 14,000, 15,000 in year 2 to 5.
Yeah.
because they're partially funded in the first year and then fully funded.
So we're kind of recouping it over 5 years, a good
Yes.
percentage over 5 years by taking it out.
Yeah. So this-
Okay, so are you looking for then a motion here?
Yeah, so
to- Yeah,
It would be a resolution to utilize the COVID relief grant funding in the amount of $145,000 to pay for the request of the new pickup truck and 5-ton crane, and remove those operating expenses out of the sewer and water budgets.
okay, is there somebody who would like to make a motion for or against on this?
I'll make a motion, we take it out of the reserve.
Out of the money that we
Yeah,
got from the.
It's already
okay.
in the reserve.
Is there a seconder for that? I will second it then, to put it on the table. So, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. So speaking against the motion, the town received an enormous gift of property just off of Maple Drive. We were reluctant to do anything without solid planning about how we were going to move forward with that. We haven't quite done that, but my point is that we're not moving forward until we do the planning on it. The dollar value of that is very similar to what we're talking about right now. Why would we spend money without a plan? And I think Councillor Harvey alluded to that a few minutes ago. We can't just move forward without something solid to base it on, just because we're trying to solve an immediate problem. I understand the impact that it has on the budget, but this introduces another dynamic into the whole situation, and it would be just wrong for us to do that without a solid plan right now. In addition to that, once again, I will say, we are going to have negative impacts in our community. Our budgets will be affected. Every individual in Canada, and certainly every individual in Osoyoos, will be affected in some way about how we're going to deal with the economic outcomes of the pandemic that we're dealing with right now. This is a great fund to leave there until we know what those are, and a proper plan on how we're going to spend that money.
Thank you. I get it. Councillor King and then Councillor
Yeah, I
Harvey.
guess I'd speak against Mr. Rhodes' comments. I definitely understand we need a plan for the 1.6 million. That makes sense. But again, you're talking about hypothetical in the future, which you're more likely right, but I can't presume that we're going downhill in the next 12 months like you're suggesting we are. I see an impact right now for our residents by taking this money out of that fund specifically to bring the taxes down at this time to benefit our residents.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey?
I just want to echo Councillor Rhodes' comments, which kind of echoed my earlier comment. That is, I can't support this motion without a plan. And at the end of the day, the plan may well say spend $145,000 on a truck and a crane, but I can't support that today.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bennett?
And I have to agree, I feel that if there's a way we can take the pickup and the crane out of this and defer it maybe to the next year, maybe hire the person and not buy the pickup and the crane right away and defer it, or find a different way to pay for it. But this time I can't agree to say, let's pull 145 out of that fund until it's more discussed.
Okay, and I'll just give my 2 bits worth first. I can support this. I think that $145,000 from 1.6 million is a legitimate use for this money. I realize that that we may not have a plan for all of the money yet, but I think it's there. It's available for our use, and to me, this makes sense to bring down the increase and to save our taxpayers a little money. I think it's a positive move. If it was a lot more money, I would be a little more concerned. But to me, this is a good use of that grant money. Did you want to say something, Mr.?
Yeah, Your Worship, if I could, I understand council hasn't had the opportunity to have a discussion about the potential use of these funds and this gift that the communities received to deal with economic impacts of COVID. But I guess we're having that discussion now. And my thought on it all along was that we'd try to be strategic and leverage this to best advantage to strengthen the financial position of the community. I think using it to upfront pay purchases of required capital isn't a unwise use of the funds. In fact, when I first learned of it, I looked at the planned capital expenditures for equipment from the fire department, and I thought if we could, instead of debt financing pieces of equipment over 5, 10, or 15 years, if we could pay the capital cost of a couple of pieces of that equipment up front from these funds, and thereby reduce the necessary tax increase to pay that equipment financing cost, but maybe do a small increase towards a capital equipment reserve fund so that we get in front of these purchases in the future, as opposed to always being behind and having to debt finance things and in a sense, this is sort of what we're trying to achieve here with this funds. And I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's supportable and it will lessen the impact. And so I know we're not talking about the entirety of the fund, and we're going to have to be strategic. Also, council being asked to decide parts of the budget in bits and pieces right now. What we aren't discussing is the tax rates bylaw or tax incidence or who pays what. And so when that discussion is had, use of the remainder of that fund can form part of that thinking as well.
Okay, thank you. So, Mrs. Hilson, could you please read the motion that's on the table at the moment?
Hopefully I captured it. That council utilize the COVID restart grant in the amount of $145,000 for the new pickup truck and the cost of the 5-ton crane, and remove the operating expenses out of the sewer and water budgets, capital budgets.
Operating budgets.
Thank you.
Okay, so out of the operating budget. Okay, so I'm going to ask the question. All in favor of that? Against? Okay, that was defeated. So thank you very much. Is there, so now do we have to go through with the,
First 3 readings of the bylaw.
okay. Did you have a question first, Councillor Harvey?
It's an observation that clause 7 of the bylaw, which is on page 99 of the book, says it shall take effect the first day of January 2020. I don't know if you need an amendment, or if we want to go through 3 cycles, first reading, amendment, et cetera, like we did on the other one.
We'll have to.
Just
Good
just
catch.
pointing it out.
No, good catch.
So what do we do? Do we hold off on this
No.
then?
No, we would do the same thing we did for the waste management.
Yes?
We would do first reading, or motion for first reading of the bylaw. That would be the first start. And then we would motion to amend the bylaw.
All
and
right.
Then
All right, so
I
can
make a
we,
motion first reading.
so Councillor King is making a motion for the first reading. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bennett. Now, before we vote on it, we make an amendment.
Yeah, I move an amendment
being
that
repealed.
section 7 be amended by deleting reference to the year 2020.
No.
Replacing it by 2021.
All right, so that would be in the bylaw. Anywhere that it says 2020, we would move it, we would change that to 2021. Mr. Zackel?
that would affect us in a number of places, though.
Yes, it
No, so
would.
it's just that section 7.
Section 7, yes.
Isn't it in number 1 as well? Isn't this sewer bylaw 1368, 2021?
No, it would be sewer fee bylaw number 1368, 2020, because that's the, it's being read and adopted in 2020.
So it's only at line number 7. So is there someone who would like to move the amendment to change that, number 7, to 2021? Councillor King, Councillor Bennett, all in favor of the amendment? Councillor Harvey, you're in favor of the amendment, changing that? Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
So now we're gonna go back. We've voted on that. Now we're gonna go back and,
You're gonna vote on first reading as it's been amended.
okay. So is there someone who would like to go ahead? Councillor Rhodes?
So moved with that wording.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Bennett? So we are now going to ask you to vote on having the first reading as the amended bylaw, or is it now called, we're not calling it an amended, it's the bylaw.
Yes.
Yeah,
First reading of the bylaw,
as amended.
as amended, okay. Oh, we'd already done that. So we've got it moved and seconded. All in favor? Against? No?
Yeah.
You're against, all right. So
Thank you.
that was carried.
Now we're gonna look for second and third readings.
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so, this is confusing. All right, so we need a motion, please, for second and third readings. Councillor Rhodes. Councillor King, seconding
Okay,
that.
just 1 second, sorry.
Aren't you? I'm just
you're too
guessing.
Why not get on the table?
Well, we want it on the table, so,
Oh, you'd move it.
So it was moved by Councillor Rhodes
yes.
Yeah.
and seconded by,
Councillor King,
thank you, to be read second.
yes, but that we read this bylaw for the second and third
time.
reading.
Thank you.
All in favor? Against? Okay. Thank you. Is there anything else that we need? Pardon me?
Just a question.
Yes.
What would have happened here if we defeated this?
We'd look for direction on the changes that you'd like to make to the.
Will we be back and look through it again
proposals.
completely? Okay, thank you.
All right. Are we now finished with the sewer?
Yep.
Can we have lunch? Yep. So, Mrs. Hilson, what do we do? Do we put, have a motion to postpone this? What's the
Yes.
wording?
To recess.
To recess. We need a motion to recess, and do we need to say when?
1 o'clock.
Yeah, let's go 1 o'clock.
All right, until 1 o'clock. Councillor Bennett is moving that. Councillor Rhodes is seconding that. All in favor?
So this is a budget presentation for the 2021 to 2025 water operating and capital fund for the town water and water district. Budget is being presented to council with a 3.22% increase to water user fees and a 2.77% increase to water district user fees, which is an annual increase of $11.80 to a single-family residence. This will increase revenues by $70,900 to offset the increase in operating expenditures. For 2021 to 2025, it's estimated that the increased water user fees will be 5% annually for those years. Operating expenditures have increased by $91,536, or 4.93% for 2021. The majority of the increases are for wages and salaries, $49,295, maintenance, $13,201, chlorine, $10,800, equipment financing, $11,400, and utilities, $6,840. The town of Oliver is currently in budget deliberations as well and has given their first 3 readings to their bylaw to increase their water fees by 4% for 2021. And water district rates, water rates and regulations amendment bylaw number 135501/2020 and water district rates and regulations amendment bylaw 1357.02/2020 are attached for council's consideration. And at this point in time, I'd like to pass it over to Mr. Bronstein again. And the first item of discussions to bring the water councillors up to speed would be page 110, and that's the operational budget increase for the water full-time equivalent part.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, you have a staff report before you. Again, I would like to open the floor to questions by council. We've I know the water councils were not here to discuss this morning, so again, I'd like to open the floor to them, to any questions, comments, concerns, and discussion.
So I can't see if Counselor Appleby has his hand up. So could somebody tell me?
Nope, I don't.
Okay.
No, I'm good.
So does yes, go ahead, Counselor King.
Yeah, can you just explain to me, I guess, just on this maintenance, you got a 13,201 increase, and on the operating fund, is that like mixed into the 3 different maintenance, pump maintenance and pump house maintenance on 108? If I'm in the right section, water operating fund?
Sure, hang on, Councillor King.
So what are you looking at? Which
Well, on your budget, it says 13,201 for maintenance. Then I turn over to page 108. I presume it's in the top section.
That's quite the music that you're listening to.
Turned off.
Don't forget to pick up the milk jug.
It's for the card game, actually.
Okay.
And I look at 108, and I guess it relates to the first section, water operating fund expenses. Am I in the right place? Right?
So what are you asking,
I
Councillor
just
King?
want to know if that 13,000 is in just the maintenance, the top one material, or the pump house maintenance, or the pump house maintenance material? Is it included in all 3 of those, or just one of them?
So it's basically included in the water maintenance, water district maintenance, and then for water maintenance wages and water district maintenance wages. So it's in 4 line items built into the budget already.
Okay, so it says it's in the operating expenditures.
And also equipment costs.
I'm just looking at the one, just the maintenance.
So water equipment costs,
No, just the
Just the
maintenance.
maintenance one.
13,000.
You've got a maintenance increase of 13,000.
yeah, so it's built in all of those.
It's kind of combined in 3 or 4 different places?
That's correct, yes.
All right. I see we've had a good,
Counselor Harvey, did you have a question?
I don't know if it's a question or another soapbox,
Go ahead.
but it's on Mr. Brownstein's report for the water sewer FTE. I know we talked about it this morning, but somewhat for the benefit of water council. I'm, and some of the justifications, especially around justifying this $90,000 position and $45,000 truck, are that we're going to save on engineering and consulting fee some amount, not specified. In my opinion, these kinds of requests should be presented as a pseudo business case with an estimate for the savings, and said estimate should be shown as a savings on the expense side. And so on page 105, instead of just showing increases, we should show a savings on engineering and consulting costs of some amount. And I appreciate you can't know, but when I was doing business cases in the private sector, to get money from the board to run a project, we would do best case, medium case, minimum case. And then take the minimum case and take that out of your budget. Instead of continuing to ask for the same amount for consulting and engineering and ask for a $90,000 supervisor and a $45,000 truck, there should be a balance there. We should be bold and take money out of an expense line. And so I have a question for Mr. Zackel. Am I correct? I'm trying to find engineering and consulting. I see at the very bottom of page 107, water engineering, $10,000. Is that engineering and consulting for, that's where we might gain savings with this position? Or is there some other line item on here where we might gain savings? I'm just trying to figure it out.
Sorry, Councilor Harvey, if you don't mind, I'll answer that question. There'll be some savings in that line item, but there'll also be some savings in our capital costs. You had to understand, again, you fully know that capital costs have engineering-related questions within them, and I'm hoping that, some of that may be impacted by this position. There's a lot of things that, aren't captured within that 10,000 that are occurring that again, I don't know about. But we would try to decrease that cost to the town in regards to development inquiries, et cetera, and try to keep that more in-house questions in regards to servicing.
Okay, that's good. I guess what I'm asking for is that you be bold and you reduce that amount, reduce that 10,000 by some amount. And so therefore, the increase, instead of being 3.22, it could be lower because there's going to be a savings.
Is that a possibility?
So
That-
your 7.7 capital includes engineering costs.
That's correct.
They're in there.
Yep,
And they're at what, 10 or 12% of growth probably.
out there.
So you're talking $750,000.
Yep.
So the ability to fine tune capital projects, to access grants, to earn savings is very much there.
Mhm.
And I understand why you're reluctant to quantify it, and it's probably a new concept for us to move in that direction. Yeah, I get what you're saying, though. I make total sense that we try to put some number to it.
So can I
It
just,
would be a lot easier. It would be a lot easier for me to support a request for this new hire if there was some indication of the degree of saving.
so can I just, Mr. Zackel, for the benefit of our two water councillors, we have discussed this particular issue already this morning when we talked about sewer. So the same report was in the sewer as is in the water. And Mr. Brownstein explained through all of the projects that we have this morning that a utility superintendent, which is what he was asking for, would handle water, sewer, and landfill issues. And he explained it quite well about the savings that would be realized likely in the town in all those budgets if we had somebody like this on staff who would likely be able to do a lot of the things that Mr. Brownstein has to either get an engineer, true, to come in and do, or and hire it out and ask us a special consultant. So we went around this particular issue quite a bit this morning, and we have agreed to leave it in the budget. So I think that's important because this isn't the first time we've seen this particular one on page 110. So I'm sorry, and Mr. Zackel might be able to add to that, I'm not sure.
No, that was good.
Okay.
I was just more speaking to the line item of the water engineering.
Okay,
That budget amount does not relate to any capital project. So those were for expenditures related to engineering costs that were water general in nature. If we were looking at some annual reports that needed to be done regarding licensing, things like that. Other general engineering issues that weren't specific to a capital project.
so go ahead, Counselor, Director, see, we get all mixed up. Counselor Appleby, go ahead.
Well, I'm with Councillor Harvey or whatever. You know, why can't you just strike like $10,000 out of the budget as a starting point?
Anybody?
That is the budget number for water engineering total.
Well, yeah, but you've got the sewer engineering and you've got the other engineering. So I'd leave it up to whomever, but somewhere along the line, take $10,000 out.
Does
And
that,
see if we and try and work within that area and see if the new guy can fill the bill.
go ahead, Mr. Brownstein.
Thank you, Worship. I appreciate Councillor Appleby and Councillor Harvey's discussion point on this. My concern is, again, this position doesn't start for another potentially 6 months. I still have 6 months of a year to get through where I need that assistance. Is there an appetite to readjust this in 2022 and allow me that 6 months to then formulate how this is going to impact our operating budgets and provide some better detail to council at that point in regards to reducing some of our operating costs in regards to engineering. I'm not saying I can eliminate it 100%, but there may be some opportunity for a reduction.
And consultants, am I correct? And it may not be an engineer.
Yep.
That's the consultant. Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, I appreciate that in year one, savings will be probably marginal at best because of the timing. But future years, I would like to see, where the savings come from in the budget, but also in this report, in asking council to approve this new hire, I would have appreciated some estimates, best case, worst case, medium case, of savings in when the guy or girl becomes fully operational, let's say 2022. Otherwise, it's just more spent. I mean, I appreciate it takes your load off, but it's just increases. There's no indication anywhere of any savings.
Go ahead.
And that was the anecdotal justification for this hire when we talked about it this morning.
Councillor King?
Yeah, I guess I'd look at it a little different way. I could see leaving that 10,000 in for engineering. I mean, you only spent 2,700 this year, but the year before was 17,000. I guess where I would look at, though, underwater contingency, you've got a 20,000 budget, and this is the first time. We never had it in 2019 or didn't spend any. We haven't spent any in 2020, so maybe that could bring down to 10 instead of 20 as a contingency.
Contingencies built into our budgets in case of emergency, in case of things that
No,
go
I
sideways.
realize what a contingency is.
So it's been a consistent amount in our budget to give us a protection. It always turns into surplus if it's not used, which is utilized for us for future years. So by reducing that, we are tying ourselves down. However, if we did have something from an emergency standpoint, we'd get it done anyways, because we'd either do a financial plan amendment or deal with it in that respect. So, I mean, that is council's prerogative if they want to.
Well, I understand a contingency, but for the last 2 years, we've never used it.
Yeah.
So I don't say we don't need some type of contingency, but maybe that could be 10 or 15 instead of 20 to try to save a few dollars.
I believe a water pump, as an example, is a lot more than $10,000 if one goes down.
But you've got pump house, or don't you have a water pump expense here?
Yep, that's just.
That's separate from the
That's
contingency.
just strictly maintenance. But if we have a water pump actually physically go down, Jared, what do they cost on average?
It depends on the size. Anywhere from, I'm replacing one right now, 15,000, all the way up to, if you want to do pump and motor, 140,000.
Well, then I guess I'd go back to, how old are our pumps? No idea.
Well, I think we have.
So that's, again, that's,
And that goes back to the program you're pushing for. I respect what you're saying. It's just trying to save a few
This is the thing,
dollars. Engineer, we
yeah.
need some type of funding. I just looking at another way to shave 10,000 off.
I don't want to speak out of turn. I mean,
Go ahead.
there are capacity issues resource-wise in this department. From a management perspective, you come up with an excellent point. How old are our pumps?
Yeah.
How old are our motors? When was the last time they were serviced? When was the last time they were replaced?
No idea.
I can't tell you that off the top of my head. I have to probably spend a good 3 or 4 days going through paper files to figure this out. That's where this position comes in, and that's why I'm having, this is why one of the passions I have about this position is to develop these programs for us so that we understand that what our capital costs are going to be next year, in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now. Allow me to have that resource to then provide council with the information that you're asking for right now. So I can dive into our budgets and say, you know what, yeah, we spend, $3.8 million on True last year. What? But I don't have that capacity right now to sit down and provide those types of information to the council. This position, again, frees up my ability to perform the tasks of a director, not as a utility supervisor. Anyway, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I really like Councillor Harvey's word bold if we have not used that $10,000 over last year, 17,000 last year, we never used that either. Could have, yeah, I was just gonna say, we don't know how far that goes back. Why not be bold? Let's just take it out of there. It's not the end of the world. I understand all about reserves, and I have a lot of mixed opinions about them and that kind of thing. If it really, you know, if the sense is that it's not essential, then let's take it out of there.
I think you kind of misinterpreted, Councillor Rhodes. We did spend 2,700 out of the 10,000 this past year. In the year before, we spent 17,000. We didn't save it, we spent it, actual, in 2019. So 10 is just kind of a happy middle number.
The amount that we're not spending or we haven't spent is a contingency.
Yeah, that's different than
and that's-
engineering.
Yeah, that's basically
Just sit there.
a slush fund,
Hypothetical.
as you want to call
Yeah,
it,
it's like-
in case of emergency. So,
Yep.
I mean, yes, if council wished to reduce that to lessen the impact, I mean, that is a consideration. What Jared is speaking to, needing more time regarding the water engineering component, I mean, is understandable as far as, you know, by next year's budget, he will know more details to be able to give a hard and fast recommendation of where those savings are going to affect the entire operating budget. So that's a good thing.
So, is it possible, because obviously this person hasn't been hired yet, would you take that into consideration then, Mr. Brownstein, and next year at the same time when we do budgets, would you consider that as an added component to presenting to us? Would that be a reasonable thing to ask?
Your worship, if this position were successful, I mean, this would free up a lot of my time to do these deep dives into the budget. And to, again, I need to sit down, I need to go over it from head to tail, honestly. I need to figure out where we're spending money, where we're not spending money, and present to council some realistic stuff. And then I'll try to, again, to address Councillor Harvey's concerns as well as Councillor Appleby's, is try to say, you know, how much money we are spending on engineering or consulting fees, and try to derive how much of a savings myself are providing to the town, as well as utility superintendent, as we start to free up more time. The utility superintendent probably won't impact as much as my time is going to impact on engineering costs. I'm slowly taking on more and more and more of that aspect of the community's understanding of things.
Okay.
Less stuff is being diverted. But again, I want to have that ability to do more.
Sure. Got it, thank you. Councillor Morera.
This person you thinking or talking about hiring, is he an engineer?
I don't know.
No, Councilor Mara, you would not be an engineer.
How was I saving on engineering then?
A lot.
I've been doing this for the last 30 years. We're gonna save on engineering, gotta do this or that. We haven't saved squat.
So,
Councilor Moore, can you please speak into the microphone?
I appreciate that, Councilor. I can't answer what's happened in the past. I can only look to the future. You will never get away from not using consultants. I agree with you. You will never get away from not having the need for an engineer, 100%. It's the little stuff like servicing questions and where's this manhole and where's this water line and why is this not showing up on here, and what about flushing this part, or the little operational questions that we seem to be relying on third-party consultants way too much. That's not what they're there for. A third-party consultant is there to provide us with engineering specialty in regards to capital programs and something that is far beyond my scope. Again, 20 years in utilities, 20 years in municipal experience, seen a lot of stuff over my years. I try not to reach out to that third-party consultant as much as somebody else might, because been there, done that. But right now, I can't justify that number. I can't tell you what it is. I can't say we're going to save 30% on consulting fees. I can't give that to you. I'm hoping over time I can present those numbers to council and say, yeah, you know what, now that you've provided me the time and you've given me this position, yeah, look, I've reduced our spending on consultants by 15%. Again, I can't comment on what's occurred in the past. All I can do is view the future.
Can I just add, I think we have a spare pump somewhere. It seems to me, I remember in the last a couple of years ago, didn't we get a spare pump? It's sitting up in your office. No, I'm kidding. It's
Actually,
up
Your
there
Worship,
somewhere.
we do have a spare pump, but it's not sitting in my office. But, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So these are all important things that we've obviously need to bring up at this time. But I think we need to give Mr. Brownstein a little leeway here in dealing with this and understanding our concerns. Hopefully by next year at this time, we'll have a better understanding of the questions that have been brought up today. And I don't think we can expect to have them answered today from the sounds of it. So can we go on to the next item, or was there anything else? Yeah. And actually, Councillor Moreira has been here longer than any of us, you know, way back in the dark ages, because he's been, well, it's close. Because he has been a water councillor since the day one. So, so he has seen a lot of things in the last 35 years, Claude? 31, okay. Thank you. All right, can we go on to the next item, or where are we at? I'm confused.
I think we'd be moving on to the capital.
Okay.
Or the 2021 capital. So that's page number 114.
Thank you. So that's the electrical and SCADA upgrades water. And just so that we already went through this morning, didn't we?
Yes, that's correct,
And
Your
so please don't be horrified at the 1.68 million, because it's broken down over 7 years. So would you like to explain a little bit about this, Mr. Brownstein, mainly for the water councillors' benefits?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So basically, again, for Councillor Moreira and Councillor Appleby's background information, as you guys are fully aware, our systems are managed by a SCADA system, a supervisor control and data acquisition system. As with all software, with all hardware, all computer-based components, they start to deteriorate over time. Your computer doesn't last forever, and it's the same with our SCADA infrastructure. This program is to get ahead of the curve, to address our PLCs and HMIs before we start getting failures and catastrophic failures where we can't no longer manage our systems remotely. This is also an upgrade to our systems to provide the opportunity for us to manage more effectively remotely. This will allow us to now be able to go to an iPad or my desktop or my laptop and turn on a pump at station 9, turn on a pump at station 8, check on the condition of station 9, check on the condition of station 8. And again, do that for the rest of our infrastructure. Again, upgrades to intrusion alarms, so that we know who's coming and going out of our facilities. Because right now, I couldn't tell you. If we had a break-in, that scares me. Because right now, there are no intrusion alarms in our systems. You didn't hear me say that. So again, this is a 7-year program to bring all our wastewater, all our water, including the irrigation districts, up to speed, up to the point where we can properly manage our system remotely. I'm hoping this will, again, reduce some operating costs, allow me to divert operating costs elsewhere instead of going out and checking on these stations every day. These should be robust enough that we can rely on our alarms to notify of us what's going on instead of us going up to these stations daily to check them. Any questions?
So,
Councillor Appleby?
Councillor Appleby, you're okay with this? You see that that it's for 2021, the amount is 57,770, not 16 million, or 1.6 million. I'll just move the
Just
comma.
down.
Okay, so we all right? Well, go ahead, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mayor McCordoff. Well, since we're creating a wish list for things that are going to happen in the future, maybe next year, just so we don't have so much redundancy, these common reports between sewer and water, maybe we should have them together.
Sure.
And we only have to go, I mean, I understand the importance of having them separately, but we could accomplish that by only going over it once.
Okay. So what we can do for next year is bring these reports in at the point at which water councilors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So could the
Oh.
water councillors, is that what you're suggesting,
how you
be
gonna-
part
how
of
you
the,
You're not gonna be able to
Report
pass your
once,
water
decide
bylaw
twice.
until the end of the.
yeah,
Or your water.
We'd have the water before sewer.
Okay.
Basically what we do.
Okay.
'Cause then that's where the multiple reports come into play.
Yep.
So we deal with water first.
And
then
sewer
then-
second?
Then sewer, and then general.
okay, that would make sense.
Yeah, it's just that we went through it in quite detail this morning, and
Yeah.
they should have been the beneficiaries of that
Yeah.
part of it as well. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Same comment as before. I mean, we're being asked to approve $1.6 million investment over time, and that's fine. But there was a comment just recently about saving on operational costs, but that doesn't really show up here. And how much, when, where, an estimate would be really appreciated in future reports. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's noted. Okay, so we'll go on to that one. Oh, Councillor Appleby.
Mayor and councilors, that's not that I want any more duties to look after, but in reading the material, the sewer portion that goes out towards Willow Beach, I was just looking at it and saying, those people on that line that don't have any say whatsoever as to how their costs may increase or be changed in any manner. And I'm just wondering if the area of the rural area, put it that way, becomes more sewered, will that change in some fashion? How is there some way we're going to deal with this down the road?
Mr. Chabot, are you going to answer that one?
Well, Your Worship, I'd like to, but I don't know the history of how the town came to find itself providing extraterritorial service provision in the regional district. I understand better the solid history. Typically, if you're going to provide municipal services in a rural area, you need the consent of the regional district, and they will often impose conditions on your service provision or a review of your budget to serve the rural residents as their elected representatives. And so maybe Mr. Moreira knows.
Actually, you said it.
Okay,
In the regional district, if there's a complaint or whatever,
yeah.
and he takes it to
It goes through them, and they represent the rural residents. And typically, if it weren't the solid predated incorporation of the city and provided the water, it would be a similar approach to provisional water in the rural area, and you wouldn't have water councillors in both Oliver and the Soyuz to represent those interests. It would go through the regional district.
Okay, that's fine. I need an understanding. Thank you very much.
Yeah, because as a community, what we would have done is put basically a flow meter at the property line of the town boundary and said, okay, we're going to charge you for every ounce of water we're providing to the rural areas, and that's the extent of the municipality's obligations. It would be up to the regional district to then maintain, operate everything in that water system, because we'd be considered a utility, servicing another utility.
Any comments, Councillor Moreira? Okay, so that's a huge portion of paper that you've got in there that you can skip over and now go to page 157. Am I correct? I didn't miss anything? Okay.
Sorry,
North
157.
Domestic System Meter Installation. Mr. Brownstein.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a tidy up project from actually ongoing since 2019. Hoping to get this one off the books this year, just to complete the final of the meter installations and system 8.
So is it in fact 10,000
It will be in
that you
fact
need this year?
$10,000, yes.
Okay. Any questions about that one? No?
So, are those funds left over from the water installation from a year and a half ago?
Honestly, Councillor, I could not tell you. I believe it's a separate, it is leftovers?
It is leftovers.
Okay.
Basically, that's why it's coming out of reserves.
Okay. It is leftovers, Councillor Appleby, if you didn't catch that.
Okay. Counselor Appleby, you're okay with that?
Well, I hear it coming out of reserve, so, and it wasn't approved before?
Well, it's a carryover project.
It's
It must have been.
a pre-approved project, Councillor Appleby. Can you hear me? Is it this one?
I'm listening.
So it's a pre-approved project. So this is funds that are left over from the initial twinning of System 8 that we've put into reserves and completing the meter installation, is my understanding.
Okay, so I guess my question is, why are we dealing with it now then?
It's been a carry forward since 2019. We haven't completed the works.
So the budget amount is being used this year, the 10,000, right?
Okay.
The project will be completed this year.
Okay, the next one is the Vedette Drive water main upgrade, and it is also a carryover project.
That is correct, Your Worship. This is a carryover from 2020. This tender was let. Contractor has been selected and work will be starting in January 2021, and this project will be incorporated into that overall road redesign. So that full $75,000 will be carried forward.
From the water reserves?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions about that one? And are they doing the water on Vedette Drive first before they do the sidewalks and the roads? Is that it?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Okay, are you coming back
deep-
with that later?
Deep utilities, yes.
Okay. All right, and so you've got all of the drawings here that show that. It's kind of interesting, quite detailed. Does anybody have any questions about the Vedette Drive water upgrades? No?
We have to block that road off while you're doing that stuff, work? Or it'll be a one-way?
It'll probably be one way, Councillor King. Again, I'll leave that up to the contractor to determine how they're going to do that.
There's lots of people live along there and have to back out on it, yeah.
People are gonna scream.
Okay, so we're moving to page 168, groundwater treatment facility, phase 1, transmission and distribution upgrade. Hopefully we don't have to pay $1 million this year, or do we?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, this is $1 million hit this year. This project is integral in providing the east side with adequate flow, as well as provide us with the necessary capacity to bring in water treatment, should we be successful on any grant funding. Right now, we have one single main hung off the bridge deck that services the whole east side of the community. That main goes down, and that whole east side is without water. Well, actually, it's with water without fire protection. So this is again a pinch point in our distribution system, and is again a critical path on us, one, providing water treatment, and two, ensuring water demand on the east side. Go ahead.
applied for a SERP grant,
Yes, we applied for a SERP grant for this as well,
just haven't.
but we haven't heard. But this project needs to go ahead whether or not we're successful on the SERP grant or not.
And this has to do also with the OIB, because it's servicing properties on there.
It's part of the demand model, yes, Your Worship. So again, it would provide that greater capacity should the OIB want to develop within their region.
Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Rhodes.
That was part of my question. The other comment I wanted to make is, this is about $23 million cheaper than the alternatives that we were looking at.
That is correct, Councillor Rhodes.
Correct.
So we are looking at groundwater treatment instead of going to full surface water treatment. Full surface water treatment plant, we were looking at possibly a capital investment of $40 million. And that would be a one-time hit in the next 2 to 3 years. We've now gone more towards groundwater treatment, which is a $11 million hit in the next 2 years. And then another, don't quote me on this, I believe another $6 or $7 million hit in 2024. So overall costs with grant funding, yeah.
Okay, so we're going ahead with this, whether you get the CERB grant or not.
That is correct, Your Worship.
And is it CERP?
Yeah, Community Economic Resilience Investment Program.
Okay.
And I forget, what was the funding model, was it
It was, I believe, 90% dollars,
90%?
or
Let's
90
hope
cent
we get
dollars, I
it.
should say, sorry.
So that will bring this down quite a bit then.
That is correct, Your
We won't have to
Worship.
use all of this if we get the syrup grant. Okay. Fingers crossed, everybody.
Yes.
Yeah, because we'll have to borrow against future grants for water treatment anyways, and reduce borrowing because we'll have a component built in. So fingers crossed on the grant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, no questions about this one? All right, now to the next one, 9.3 million.
It's a big dollar amounts, Your Worship.
Yes, for sure.
So this is continuing with phase 1 of the groundwater treatment. This is the transmission, distribution upgrade, and facility construction. So this would be the mains going down, upgrade mains going down Main Street, upgrades going down Cottonwood, upgrades going down Kingfisher, as well as the construction of a manganese removal plant, UV treatment, and chlorination. This is the big ticket item, and this is we're waiting on. I believe we applied for 2 grants for this one. We had an additional. We applied for CERP for this one, and no. Green infrastructure. Green infrastructure, and what was the other one? Anyways, there were 2. They were both investing in Canada grant programs. So they're the big ones, the infrastructure program grants. We applied for one that was $0.80, and the other one was $0.90, and we're hoping for one of them.
So I see that the plant, the treatment plant is proposed for Kingfisher and Chickadee Court, so it's right beside the Cactus Center.
Yes, that is a proposed location. There are, and again, these are preliminary discussions about relocating that plant to actually the east side.
To where?
To the east side.
Yeah, because was it not supposed to go over into the corner at one point? Sort of on 89th and Kingfisher?
Yeah, that's where it's proposed on that, would be Chickadee Court, which is right at 89th and Kingfisher, right where Jack Shaw Park is. There is discussions of actually relocating that plant onto the east side and putting it on potential lands that we just got from the Palms.
Oh. Oh, okay. Would it take up all of that
No.
property?
We take up the part in the rear on Maple.
Yes, and take
Oh,
up
I
part of
see.
that. And it also allow us to potentially drill another well at that location right next to the treatment plant and increase capacity.
How much would that cost?
I don't know, Your Worship.
Building another well.
I'll pull, again, this is a general number, I'd say probably 1.75 to 2.5 million, depending on the size of the well we went with.
So I think we need to start picking up pop bottles on the side of the road.
Got a lottery ticket.
And this,
Here's another one.
He's giving me one already.
and this doesn't go forward unless we get grant funding.
That is correct. If we're unsuccessful in grant, then it'll sit on the books. We will be completing design for this prior to any grant funding, so that's sitting there shelf ready,
But
depending on
you
grant
don't know
progress.
where to build the design. I'm at
Yeah, those are still preliminary
Yeah,
discussions.
2
So.
locations. Okay.
Hydraulically, it doesn't matter. It's just whether or not we want to give up any of that property for infrastructure purposes.
Okay.
Oh, just another question.
Yes, sure.
So just hypothetically, using the 2021 1.7 million, if we got funding to 90% of that, we only got to come up with a couple $100,000, or do we got to come up with 1.7 on top of their 90%?
The way the grant was presented was it would be a $9.3 million, but we would have to come up with our 10% portion, so our 10 cent dollars, as well as the full cost of universal metering. Universal metering is included within that 9.3, and universal metering, I think, came in at $3.2 million, and that will be refined once we complete our metering implementation plan. That will come out of town budgets and town coffers.
Okay, so-
We cannot put that as part of that grant funding.
So if we, the whole thing, say we got the 90%, we'd only have to come up with 930,000 and the grants would cover the other.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are we okay? Any other questions? All right. So, and we've had this report already done. Is this by True? The water treatment and manganese removal feasibility? Yes, it's true.
Study we got completed.
Yep.
So it's in here. It's already been done.
Yep.
Okay, so it's ready. Any other questions on that? Okay, so we'll go to page 181, the survey equipment. Is this not the same issue that we dealt with this morning? Where did we ever get on that? I'm in a fog now. Did we say yes or no to that?
You said yes, Your Worship.
Yes,
Left in, yeah.
Okay,
So again, this is a carry forward, again, from 2020, to provide the opportunity for operations to have survey equipment of our own to spatially locate our infrastructure for asset management purposes, as well as response purposes for our staff.
okay. I'm looking at our water counselors mainly, if they have any questions or concerns, because we have talked about this morning and. Okay, we're all right? Oh, go ahead, Counselor Appleby.
Did we not start, is this a continuation of the program we started last year, or was nothing purchased last year?
Nothing was purchased last year, Council Appleby.
It was just put on the back burner at this point, and that's why it says project carryover at the top. So it's gonna continue. Okay. All right, so pump upgrade.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I thought that if we approved it last year, which I think we did, that they would have bought something by now. And they would be asking for, additions to the equipment or whatever the case may be. If nothing's happened, then I'm wondering how much of a important item this really is.
You should have been here this morning. We did. We went round and round this and decided that it was probably a good idea to leave it in. But believe me, we did have a fair discussion on this issue this morning. Go ahead, Counselor.
Well,
Mr. Zackel. Could Mr. Zackel answer that for you?
no, that's fine. It's answered. I guess if you come back next year and I'll ask for the same thing, it probably won't fly.
Yeah, it was mainly due to staff time constraints because of COVID and things that happened that Jared didn't have an opportunity to get it ordered and purchased. So that's why it is an important item to him, and that's why he's wanting it carried forward. But yeah, due to timing, it was just, unfortunately, he couldn't get it purchased last year or this year.
We'll give them another chance.
Okay. So we're at the pump upgrade, park irrigation, gyro.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, this is a carry forward project from 2020. And yes, Councilor Appleby, I did not have time to get this one done. I'm hoping this will be completed this year. And that pump will now be upgraded and replaced. And if I don't get it done, then yes, it'll be taken off the list.
So, this is at gyro. Was part of the reason because we haven't sort of done an upgraded plan for gyro yet, or is this?
No, this is
supersedes
strictly
that?
a maintenance capital replacement program. What happened is that pump was starting to fail on us.
Yes.
It needs to be replaced in order to continue to maintain our irrigation systems down there.
Okay. Okay, all right. So now we've got groundwater treatment facility, phase 1, pre-planning and design.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is again a carry forward from 2020. There have been expenditures on this to date, and there will continue to be expenditures on this line item. This is to address archaeological studies, pre-planning design, et cetera, for our groundwater treatment facility.
And are you requiring the whole 400,000 for this year?
We're just
Has some of it-
requesting whatever we haven't spent to date to be carried forward.
Do we have any idea how much has been spent?
I don't, not the top of my head.
Okay. Any questions? All right. South Domestic Water Extension Rural. Have we put out the RFP for this?
Yes, Your Worship, if you would like potable water and domestic servicing,
do,
I suggest
I
you
would.
approve this request. No. This project is currently about, I'd say 40% complete. We've tendered contract 2, so that'd be east of Highway 97, so that'd be everything in the higher density areas. Closes on the 15th, and we're hoping to have a contract award probably first or second week of January, depending on how fast I get a staff report to you guys for acceptance of the work.
Have we had, you were concerned that people may be too busy and not apply for this. Have you had?
I have no idea who is going to be tendering this project at all. I think we've had maybe 2 or 3 inquiries.
Okay,
We won't know until the 15th of this month when it closes
That's-
to what's
that's
going to look like.
Tuesday.
Yeah.
So.
Fingers crossed.
I want this one to move ahead.
It'll move ahead no matter what. It'll be depending on how expensive
Okay.
it is.
Right, Counselor Appleby?
Sounds good.
Okay. So, and have we had grant funding approved yet? No.
For the
For the extension, it says that
yes, grant funding has been approved. I think we got
42, 4 million two?
Yeah, so ultimately, this one here, what we had remaining for the 2020 budget was 2.7 million in grant funding. Of a $4.3 million project, that's the amount that was carried forward. We've spent on this one about 1.5 million to date.
Yeah.
And we've been getting our grant funding as we're claiming it.
Okay.
As we're going forward, so this one, for the full part of system 9 is covered in the ground.
That good? Yes.
We need profit.
We need a profit.
Good luck.
Okay.
Without the hard work.
I'm hoping that the same people will apply for this because they've got all their stuff sitting over there ready.
I'm quite sure, Your Worship, the contractor will be putting in a bid for it.
Okay, universal water metering implementation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, this is a carry forward from 2020. This one was a little bit delayed due to COVID and some other things. So the successful proponent has started the process. So again, remaining funds will be carried forward to 2020 to complete. I believe we're probably sitting at about 25% spent to date. So that remaining funds will be carried forward to 2021 to complete this implementation plan.
Okay,
And I'm happy to report we will be under budget.
good. Anybody have any concerns or questions about that one? Good, so do you, are you going to talk about the capital project plan here, or does anybody have any questions on that? Pages?
Yep. If you like, Your Worship, I can mention a couple things as I
Sure.
did with the wastewater side. So again, to bring to your attention the 75,000 next year in 2022 for. Oh, sorry, we're on page 191.
Yeah.
An asset management and master plan for our water system. Again, this is a necessary evil in order for us to understand our capital expenses and our regeneration expenses over the next 20 years. This will provide us with some financial understanding of how we're going to continue to operate our water system, as well as look at how we continue to service the population currently, as well as how we look to service growth within the community and what those water mains look like, what those upgrades look like, when we put in that next well, when we put in that next reservoir, when we need to, you know, possibly install a booster station here or other water main upgrades. This could also include a hydrant upgrade program, etc. I've forecasted out from 2023 beyond, you know, $750,000 a year towards asset renewal. That may be a big number, that may be a small number, as I've alluded to in the wastewater side. These are educated guesses on potential impacts. Again, just so that council is aware of, you know, the possible things coming down the avenue in which we continue to move forward with our system. As you can see here, construct an each bench water reservoir, $2 million in 2022. This will probably be delayed until our asset management capital plan is complete. Once the master plan is complete, it will better evaluate when that reservoir is necessary and when it's necessary. There's always those two questions. Do we actually need a reservoir on the East Bench, or do we look at other avenues of putting backup generation on our wells to provide that required fire capacity? Or do we drill another larger well and put a backup generator on it to provide fire capacity? Reservoirs are great things because they need no power to do what they have to do, but again, they're big bucks. As you notice here, again in 2022, search for a new well. Again, the master plan would address those in greater detail and provide that avenue. That may get pushed out to 2024. As we bring in water meters, our demand should decrease. So then that offsets the need for additional production. So again, there's a whole bunch of other things in play that some of these things may be pushed out, but they will most likely need to happen at some point.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Jared, just a question on the East Bench. Would this take in consideration expansion? Sorry, Jared. Does this take in any consideration into potential expansion? Like if the East Bench came in, if that ever gets approved, is that built into here, or would that be because we would take over probably that water system, right?
Through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Bennett. In all honesty, these line items are before my time. I don't have a full grasp of why they were put in. Again, as part of the master plan process, council will be made fully aware of what your intentions are in regards to moving this forward. If the East Bench is something that the community wants to develop and the community wants to take in, then yes, we would look at that as a potential impact.
So they have the
Mr.
East
Zackel
Bench water system is separate from ours right now.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So taking that over, probably not the bestest of plans in the world. What we would look to do is expand our domestic system to feed the East Bench. When you take over existing water systems, one, you don't know how they've been maintained. Two, you don't know what kind of shape they're in. And three, you usually take on more headaches than they're worth. You start having valve failure issues, you start having water main issues, you have water quality issues. You don't know when the last time pumps were maintained, what the intake looks like. It's a surface water intake, I believe, for the East Bench. So then there's treatment issues. So there's a whole myriad of problems. So what we'd probably look to do, if we were to take that East Bench in as part of the municipality, we would look at expanding our domestic system out into that area, and that may trigger the reservoir.
That's why I thought maybe the new well was.
Yep. So as demand increases, you need production to meet it, right? So again, as part of that master plan, to say this is what we expect to do, even if there would be triggers in the master plan to say if we do move to the East Bench, well then this and needs to happen in the next this many years. If we decide not to, then no, you don't need to do that. So those are the types of programs I want to start getting into more detail, so that decisions that are made with educated information, not just, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
So-
give us a big deal.
Yeah.
Mr. Zackel, you were next.
And it was the previous director that had in our budget, and it's the 2024 budget, where it had $1 million in there for rural twinning for the East Bench, and having that sources of funding being grant funding, and then the owners of those, that area paying for their share of that. had that in there at that time, but the number, I have no idea where he got that at that time.
So for several years, there was the thought of expansion, and the people over in the East Bench would like to be, instead of being in Area A, they'd like to be in the town of Vesuvius. However, there's a couple of properties down on Lakeshore Drive that are still waiting to be officially within town limits, and that seemed like a fairly easy thing for those to move forward. So these things take a while, and seems to me, as long as I've been on council, which is 9 years, that has been an ask for over there, so I don't see it happening quickly, especially with the other things that are going on right now. However, I know that that was something that they had specifically wanted. But you're quite right. It would have to do a lot of planning and looking at their water systems over there first. Now, did I miss out? Did Councillor Harvey or Councillor Appleby have a question on there? I wasn't sure. No. Go ahead,
I just had a comment. So I believe there's 2 water systems over there, and both of them are not up to snuff, so to speak. So I would be cautious. I would just deal with caution.
Well, there's the one right down by the border, which has been taken over by the RDOS. So that's not something we would do. The regional district's taken over that one. And there are 2 others besides that small one at the border? Councillor Moreira?
No, I think there's one other besides that.
So there's 2 others plus the little one at the border?
What little one at the border?
Well, it's a kind of a private one, and it just came to the regional district within the last year, and they've agreed to take it on. It's down where Harfman's are.
Right at the very end of the road?
Right close to the border on that side, yeah.
Right down at the water.
Yeah, I think it's only got 12 or 14 places.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yes, there is. I didn't know about it either.
I know last year it wasn't.
It's RDOS has taken it over, that one, but are there 2 others over there now? The East Bench?
No.
Okay.
Yes.
Both water councillors have a different idea.
There is 2.
Yes, there's
2 more plus the one at the border? Do you remember that, Councillor Rhodes, that was talked about at the regional district, that little one at the border? Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
okay.
Yeah.
It's a small one.
Well,
All
the-
right.
yeah, the second one I'm talking about is even smaller.
Oh,
It only does, I'm guessing, it's a shot in the dark, maybe 100 acres, 200 acres.
okay.
It's just before the one these bench has.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere in that area there.
Oh, that little tiny pump house.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so, did you have a question, Councillor Rhodes?
No, I was
Oh,
just gonna,
and Councillor King
Hey,
does.
I had just a sidebar question. When True Consultant does a lot of these drawings and stuff, do we retain him in our office, or he retains them?
They're starting to become mine.
So, because we're actually purchasing them, so again, in the bigger picture, thinking long-term, as you take all that technology inside, I presume some of these drawings will be incorporated
Yes.
into new software.
So, to kind of give you some operational background, last year we started a GIS platform called Lightship. That provided us with an opportunity to now bring all our assets, underground assets, into one software system. As we develop that, those record drawings will be attached physically to the asset within the GIS and allow staff, when they show up to a water main break or sewer blockage, to actually click on the asset and bring up the record drawings, so that they know what's in the ground without having to then go root through a bunch of paper copies to figure out what's going on. So that's the ultimate plan for us.
Yep.
Is that once the SCADA system is upgraded, once the Lightship is fully developed, they have a tablet and they have the entire system in their palm of their hands. Is where I want to be. So
what I'm really hearing, hopefully down the road, whether it's 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, we could save some funds on consulting fees. Or,
Yes.
And I know every town usually has a consultant tied to it that gets 98% of the work, usually maybe 100% of the work.
So there's different models. Again, I come from larger centers. I've only worked in one other small town. And in small towns, normally, yes, you have a consultant for lack of a better term, on staff. Larger centers, no.
No.
You don't have a consultant
No,
anywhere near anything. When you need consultant work, you go out and you ask for a consultant through an RFP process. We're on that cusp.
Yeah.
We're almost big enough now to start going down that path of saying, well, the only time we're going to engage a consultant is if we need a consultant. So
Yeah,
we're
no,
going to
I-
engage them for capital programs.
I respect that. I guess it's just
Yep.
people are always looking at it. I mean, technically, Jim could just pull out how much we pay True in all departments in 1 year. Not that it really has to be whatever, but
You do on your Sophie
a
statement.
push of a button would tell them how much we pay True Consultants.
And I mean, True's done a lot for this community. I mean, I'm not here to slag True. They've done a lot for this community. They've provided
Oh,
us
I
with,
agree. I'm not knocking
with
them
everything.
whatsoever.
They've been successful in a lot of grant programs for us to move a lot of big infrastructure programs forward. But as we develop as a community, that sole sourcing will start not to happen. And we'll be going out to a proper competitive process for these big projects.
Yeah, well, I guess that's where I'm kind of directed it to.
Yep.
We always get asked, how come we don't have one, and we're maybe not quite there as a size.
Yep.
But all of a sudden, if we're giving him 10% of our big budget, a couple million a year, you could definitely get an engineer in-house, once we have all the drawings.
Well, that's the thing, is bringing an engineer in-house doesn't necessarily reduce your consulting costs.
Okay.
You may have the expertise in-house to further along a project in a more efficient manner, but you'll never have the capacity, and even the big cities don't have the capacity,
Okay.
to bring engineering 100% in-house. City of Vancouver might.
Yep.
You would need drafters, you'd need specialists in this, you would need all these things, and all of a sudden you've got an engineering department worth, $1 million.
City of Vancouver's advertising today for a rainwater engineer.
Yep. So,
So we went through this a couple years ago, and we actually had True sitting here at the table, and we said, and honestly, for about the past 40 years, I think, True knows where every pipe is that we know about. Every water issue, we can ask them anything, and they have that background. They've been very good to us. They have, but we haven't got the Purdy's chocolates yet, have we? Because they always send us a box. You did not.
Oh, no, I respect True having it. It's just as we move forward.
But
we'll
you're
have
quite right. I mean,
information.
we've often been asked why we don't have an engineer on site, but does that mean electrical engineer? I mean, there's about 10 different varieties of engineers, and if you have one, you then have to go out and consult for the other 9 issues that you might have. So we actually went through this in some detail a couple of years back with all of us sitting at the council table, and True, and they came in and explained what they do, and we particularly asked, do you have all of this sitting in a filing cabinet up in Kamloops? Because that might be difficult for us to get at if you guys decide to quit or whatever, there's a fire. So I'm sure this is correct, Jim, did they not say that they, like the files are always forwarded to us as they come due, and we now have access to all these files, where we didn't 10 years ago?
Yeah, they provided all of that to us electronically.
Yes.
They're just not compiled.
At that point in time, we were talking about including them into the RDOS GIS system at that time. That was before Jared's time. I don't know what's happened with the transition of those files since then, but that was all provided to us in electronic format.
And I'm sure
That's something
Oliver,
good to do.
Still available.
and Oliver would have got that as well,
Yeah.
because they're,
Oliver did put theirs onto the RDOS system, what I understand.
okay. Because they have a lot more things that they deal with the RDOS than we do, yeah. CJ, do you remember anything, you want to add anything to that? Because I think we've been through this before, and,
Your synopsis was bang on.
okay.
Yep.
So, is there anything else in any of these issues that anybody wants to discuss? So, Mr. Zackel, now what do we do?
Well, we're back to page 105,
Okay,
where, like I had previously explained to council, this is a 3.22% increase to water user fees in the town, 2.77% increase to water district user fees. It's an $11.80 increase to the average, or the single-family residence. If council is okay with that, then the recommendation is to go forward with first three readings of water rates and regulations amendment bylaw 135501 as presented. And then the second resolution is for council to give first three readings to water district rates and regulations amendment bylaw 1357 as presented. And if council's not okay with the increases, then we need to come up with other resolutions.
So, numbers one, you've given option one, so option one and option two are,
Two separate bylaws.
oh, okay, because one's for, water district, okay. So, we will take, the water rates and regulations amendment bylaw first. Council? Anybody willing to make, a motion here? Councillor Bennett? Are you going with option one?
I'll move option one.
Thank you. Is there a
So I
seconder?
just thought the water councillors might want to.
No, this is not
Oh, sorry.
theirs.
Okay.
It's
Oh,
number two. So are you doing that, Jim? Okay. Any questions on, this is not a water councillor vote, right? This is just the five of us. Yep, just the town. Okay, so, all in favor of option one? Not a favor? Oh, Councillor Harvey is not in favor. So that was, I'm assuming, a 4-1 vote? Mrs. Hilson? Okay, thank you, that's passed. Now, option two, which is for water district rates and regulations amendment bylaw, and that would be for 7 councillors. Am I correct on that?
Yep.
All 7? Okay. Would one of the water councillors like to make a motion on this? Are you moving option number 2?
Yep.
All right, I'm looking behind you. Are you seconding that? Well, I can't
I'll second it, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any concerns on this one? Okay, I'll ask for the motion. All in favor? Against? Councillor Harvey voting against. Okay, thank you. Is there anything else then that we need to discuss today?
No.
I was just gonna ask a question, but we can cancel the meeting, it's just for information.
No,
Motion to adjourn, or is it to do with something?
Yes, to do with water.
so should you,
Yeah, I was gonna ask, it's, developer permits, it's, $50 to hook up, and it's, almost $80, $79, I think, and 12 cents or 24 cents a day. Isn't that kind of gouging?
Early water?
No, this is for developers.
Oh, this is for a hydrant?
Was that
Hang
for
on.
hydrants?
I think that's for hydrants.
I didn't say that, that's why I'm asking.
I read that and thought that was a rather high.
Yeah, it's me too. Yeah, it's almost,
Where,
it's pushing $3,000 a month for developers. That's,
page is that on, Jim? Oh, developers using town water during subdivision construction recharge the following connection. That's for hydrants, Councilor Mara.
oh, okay, well, it didn't say that, I thought, geez.
Oh, so
That's-
they might be filling the water.
They might be using large volumes of water.
Yeah, no, like I
Yeah.
thought, oh, geez.
And only in
Hose
short
hooked up
bursts.
while they were building, I thought it was kind of high.
No, this would be
Oh,
for
okay.
their construction
Yeah,
purposes.
I say it was just for information for me when I read it.
okay, so we're okay with that
Yeah,
then?
oh,
Yeah, all right. So, then if we have finished the meeting, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, please. See what's happening? Nobody's
We
back.
just wanna stay here.
Yeah.
Are you
Finally
providing
cooling off
afternoon
now.
tea or what?
Karen was getting on the hot seat, trying to cool down. I'll make
Okay,
a
I'm
motion
picking
that-
two. Counselor King, Counselor Rhodes, all in favor?